Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Glendale City Council meeting of June 1st, 2010. May we have the roll call, please?
Council members Draymond.
Here.
Friedman. Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Najarian.
Here. Mr. Weaver, will you lead us in the flag salute?
Why not? Please join with me in our flag salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. This evening we pray for the continued health and vitality of our city. We give thanks for the citizens who give freely of their time in support of this community. We pray for safety of those who serve to protect our great nation, as well as pray for the safe return of our men and women serving overseas. Let us reflect on all that we have been given as citizens and residents of this fair city and actively seek ways to give back. We pray for all this and that our council and community be guided by the principles of fairness and cooperation during tonight's meeting and after. Amen.
May we have your report, please?
The agenda for the June 1st, 2010 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, May 27, 2010 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. The next item?
Next item under presentation and appointments at 3 is 3A, agenda preview for the meetings of June 8th, 2010.
Great. Mr. McFall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Next week, June 8th, first in the Glendale Housing Authority, there are no specific business items, but starting at 2:30 with the Redevelopment Agency, there is a report from the Director of Community Redevelopment Housing, and this would be the third quarter report from the Alex Regional Theater and Arts Board. The City Council that evening, starting at 6 o'clock, there are a couple of action items. The first, the Director of Human Resources has a report regarding a proposed urgency ordinance amending the supplemental benefits ordinance for certain officers, subordinate officers, assistants, deputies, clerks, and employees for the city and for their compensation. And then next, the Director of Community Planning is a funding request to complete a grant awarded to the Planning Department by the California Office of Historic Resources to upgrade the city's database of historic properties. That would be it.
Thank you. The next item.
Next item at 3B is a proclamation designating June 13th through 19th as Flag Week and a commendation to Mr. Vito Canella.
Thank you. I have a proclamation for Mr. Vito Canella and also a commendation, and I would ask Councilmember Draymond to come off the dais and present these. The proclamation is as follows. Whereas Flag Week, June 13th to 19th, 2010, was established by an act of Congress in 1966 as a 21-day period during which our flag should be especially honored and displayed. And whereas by our flag's display we reaffirm our allegiance to the principles for which it stands and honor those men and women who have served under it in protecting our nation from those who have attempted to destroy our freedom. And whereas the flag continues to stand as a symbol of hope and opportunity to those of foreign birth who have become citizens of our country, now therefore I, Mayor of the City of Glendale, do hereby proclaim the week of June 13th to 19th, 2010 as Flag Week, and urge all residents to honor America by displaying our flag during this time. Councilmember Draymond, you can present the proclamation and give us some special insight on the commendation that will follow.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, one of the few times I've ever referred to him as Mr. Canella. We've known each other since I was a little boy. Vito to everyone. So I'm happy to present this to you on behalf of the mayor and related to National Flag Week. Explain to those who don't know, the audience and those at home, about the history of National Flag Week. But Mr. Mayor and the City Council, I know Mr. Weaver is well aware. Thank you, Mr. Kasakian. National Flag Week didn't always exist. And you're looking at Mr. Canella, who is the surviving member of the two individual merchants who had the idea for National Flag Week and took the idea from Montrose all the way to through the joint Senate and House process in Washington, D.C., and it was eventually signed into law by Lyndon Johnson, I believe in 66 or 67.
1966.
66. So if you happen to be in Montrose one day, you can look at the base of the flag there at the War Memorial and see the bronze plaque that tells the history of it and Mr. Canella's role, along with Bill Bailey, who was a merchant, longtime merchant in Montrose, in making this come to be. I do have a commendation as well, but that can wait. And Vito, please say a few words.
Sure. Good evening. Everybody is familiar with Flag Day on June 14. Not too many people realize that the week of June 14 is also Flag Week. The original Flag Week is a beautiful Montrose local story. The whole thing started in Montrose during the 60s. The 60s was a time when people were demonstrating against the war in Vietnam, and though they have the right to demonstrate, in my opinion, they do not have the right to burn the flag. That's one thing that they were doing, a symbol of our nation. The burning of the flag upset many people, and few of us decided to do something to honor the flag instead. The originator of the idea for Flag Week were the late Bill Bell of Montrose and myself. And with the help from the Crescena Cañada Rotary Club and others, we collected thousands and thousands of signatures in a petition to the late Congressman H. Allen Smith, was the congressman for our district. He introduced a resolution that was approved by both the House and Senate in Washington, D.C. on June 9, 1966, was signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson. The joint resolution says that the President of the United States, and I have here the original, the President of the United States is authorized and requested every year to issue a proclamation and also call upon the citizens of the United States to display the flag during the week of June the 14th. And as you see, you saw the mayor make that statement in behalf of the city of Glendale. Every year since 1967, I have been sending letters to all the presidents, and every year, to my knowledge, I have never seen any publicity. Last year, however, I found out for the first time that the event of Flag Week was posted on the White House website. Big thing. Maybe in the future they will include a Flag Week in a national calendar to remind everybody in our nation to put the flag out during that week, the week of June 14. So please join me and the Glendale City Council to fly the flag that week. And in closing, for the reason that nobody lives forever, I have one special request for the Glendale City Council. Please make this proclamation, even if I'm not existing anymore, yearly, even in the case of my absence, give the proclamation to someone in my family. And I also like to invite everybody this coming Sunday to the Montrose Art and Craft Festival, where I'm going to be given 2,000 American flag. Thank you very much.
And Vito, don't run away, because the mayor has a commendation to you on a sort of unrelated little matter. I referred to Mr. Canella as Mr. Canella, but we have discovered that perhaps we should be calling him Sir Canella, Sir Vito. So
Now, Mr. Draymond, why don't you, with that introduction, present the commendation and give some background to it, because I know you're very familiar with some of the past history of that. I do not,
Let me
unfortunately.
read it then for you, Mr. Mayor. It's a City of Glendale Mayor's commendation presented to Vito Canella. Congratulations on receiving the Federated Italo-Americans of Southern California's 2010 Man of the Year Award, honoring your outstanding community service. The mayor applauds your many achievements, generosity of spirit, and willingness to share your time and energy to support numerous worthwhile events in our city. And it's signed R. Najarian, Mayor, June 1st, 2010. Now, I'm happy to be able to present that to you on behalf of Mayor Najarian and the City Council, but you may want to fill the public in on some of the work you did on behalf of the county, along with Mike Antonovich, your relatively recent visit to Italy, the Sister City arrangement, and your knighthood.
Jeez, you want
Sir Knight of the Realm.
You want to embarrass me? Yeah. That is true. I was part of a delegation together with Supervisor Mike Antonovich to go into Rome and sign a sister, like a sister city. That was from the region of Lazio and the county of Los Angeles. And that was something that I never going to forget, because the Italian government treat us in every way to make us feel comfortable. And they also were able to get for us to see the Pope, have a one-to-one talk with the Pope. The Pope was like from me, no, actually. And I was able to talk with the Pope, ask to bless my family and my wife because she'd been really sick, and he did. And that's, together with this honor, I'm going to cherish all the rest of my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Canella. Mr. Draymond.
And Mr. Mayor and my colleagues in the council, I want to take up too much more time, but I did also want to say that even if you don't live in the Montrose area or were unfamiliar with this story, the story of National Flag Week has always been an inspiration to me, even as a young man, because it does show how local advocacy from the community on an idea or a goal or a dream can lead to the desk of the President of the United States. It's quite a story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move on.
Next is City Council and staff comments.
Any comments, Mr. Quintero?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the two committees that put together the Memorial Day commemoration up in Montrose and here in the City Hall Plaza. I think they did a very good job. However, I did get some comments from some veterans who were a little bit, I guess, upset that the latest name on the wall, a young man who was killed in Afghanistan, a Marine Lance Corporal, was kind of, I don't think they feel that he and his family received the proper attention. Although, of course, his name was mentioned, it was on the agenda and on the program. And but anyway, I did receive that comment, and I can't say that I really disagree. I mean, the Memorial Day is about people, men and women, who have given their lives for the country, and so I just wanted to bring that up. And I'll talk to the committee. It's actually, as I mentioned to them, it's actually a Chamber of Commerce committee that puts the event together. So, but anyway, they're well attended at both locations.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver? Mr. Draymond?
Yes. First of all, again, I beg everyone's indulgence. I'm a little under the weather, but I wanted to promote something that Mr. Canella spoke of, and that is the 27th annual Montrose Arts and Crafts Festival. Here are some statistics on the event. It is the third largest arts and crafts festival in the state of California. It is the third oldest in the state of California, and it is the largest public event in the city of Glendale. And that will take place this Sunday and Saturday. Saturday, June 5th, Sunday, June 6th, from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. on Saturday, and 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Sunday. 475 some vendor booths, live entertainment, children's area, international food court, lots and lots of fun. And over the course of 2 days, depending on the year and the weather, they see anywhere between 30 and 60,000 people through that event. It is a tremendous community event and one of very long standing in our city. You should come out and help support the Montrose Shopping Park, which does this event each year, and support your local merchants in the shopping park, and enjoy the day. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver.
Just to add on to that, I've gone every year. And you know what I do?
I know what you're going to say. I remember from last year.
I Christmas shop.
Yep.
The stuff that's there, over 300 vendors with unique merchandise that you won't find anywhere else in most stores. So it's not too early to shop for Christmas for the people you want now. Stick it away for a few months. For what it's worth, it's a good idea, I think.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to report that if anyone had not heard, the 710 tunnel issue came before the MTA board on Thursday, and unfortunately, for lack of a better name, it was called the Najarian Amendment, which would have specified and required specific scoping work and alternatives analysis, failed by a 7-2 vote. And the main motion, which was to proceed with the tunnel, passed. It passed, and it was disappointing. Several leaders in the area whom I was hoping would be against the tunnel, and actually not being against the tunnel is not the proper word. Being in favor of studying the tunnel and making sure that before we invest up to $10 billion, examine all alternatives before any further money is spent. They did not seek to take that course. So the MTA has indicated and has assured us that, oh no, they are going to have a robust scoping document, and they are going to look at all the alternatives and look at rail and look at different routes and not presume that the tunnel is the only way to alleviate the traffic. Our plan now is to hold the MTA to those promises and watch them like a hawk every step of the way. And they know full well that if they do not, they are going to be ripe and vulnerable for a challenge in their EIR process. I, for one, will keep a very close eye on them and make sure that the tunnel idea does not seem to be a foregone conclusion in their minds of our planners and any of the directors. So this is not the end. This is not the beginning of the end. How does the rest of it go?
You're quoting Churchill. You're out there on a limb with Sir Winston. So.
Right.
The end of the beginning.
This maybe is not even the end of the beginning. We have not yet begun to fight.
John Paul Jones.
It's already been taken.
If those tunnel zealots think that they've got a tunnel coming in the next few years, they have a big hurdle to cross. If they thought that South Pasadena was a problem for them on the surface route, they now have Glendale to deal with. And I don't even think we haven't even taken the gloves off yet for this thing. So we are going to be very closely watching what's going on, and we need to preserve our quality of life and adopt sustainable transportation modes throughout the entire region, not just this area. Speaking of sustainable transportation modes, Mr. Zern, I had been presented with some bike parking systems, basically mini bike stations, that a very smart company has modeled to be almost a duplicate of our bus stops in design and construction. Obviously, they want some business for us to hire them to put in these bike racks. I was also contacted by a firm called Bike Station that does bike stations in Long Beach, and I contacted them through Ms. Friedman, who had some dealings with them previously. There is a Tiger grant, which has a deadline of July 16th, which is a transportation investment generating economic recovery. Tiger 1 was several months ago. Tiger 2, which has a total of $600 million for the whole country, is going to be made available. So I'd like to keep this in mind, these type of bike racks. And now that I think about it, we don't pay anything for our bus stations. The advertising covers most, if not all of it. If we can incorporate some of these in our new construction and maybe pick out some sites for placement, maybe adjacent to our bus stops, I think it'd be really good. I think it'd be right in line with what we're doing. I think Mr. Bogart was here too. I'm sure you're familiar with these. I can pass them down to you, but I'm sure you're our embedded Bicycle Coalition advocate, so I'm sure you can take a look at these and make sure that we don't leave any money on the transportation table when the grants are being made. And I don't have anything else. Any other comments? Thank you. Let's move on.
Mr. Mayor,
Consent calendar.
Next item is consent items, including the minutes following a routine and may be acted upon by one motion. A member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
I have a request to pull 5A, and that would leave 5B through E.
I'll move the consent
Mr.
calendar.
Starbird.
Just a notation on the agenda on C, there's a typographical error. It notes the amount at $200,000 to be added to the contract. That's actually $20,000.
It is correct in the report. It's just on the agenda.
That's correct in the report. It's just the agenda that has the error.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, please, for B through E.
Council members Raymond,
Yes.
Friedman, Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. 5A, please.
5A is the city clerk regarding approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting held on Tuesday, May 18, 2010, and the joint meeting of the city council and the housing authority and the joint meeting of the city council and the redevelopment agency held on Tuesday, May 25, 2010.
Okay. Mr. Draymond.
Mr. Mayor, I had thought I could just mention to Mr. Kasakian about the minutes earlier, but was advised by the city attorney to raise the issue under the agenda item. There's just an error on the minutes of May 18th for the council meeting. I was present at the meeting. I did not attend the roll call for the closed session, and although I was in the closed session, I recused myself from one of the agenda items for the closed session, but I was there. And normally it would say, although not present for the roll call, was present for the meeting, but it clearly it notes I was there because it has me voting, but nonetheless, as your council member that has never missed a meeting.
Okay. Well, will the
We will
minutes
make
be
that.
amended then?
Yeah, just make the motion,
Yes.
make a motion to approve the minutes as correct.
Okay. And is there such a motion? I'll take that as a motion, Mr.
I'll move So I was absent.
You're absent on the 8th.
Second.
I can't then.
Okay.
And who made the motion?
Mr.
Okay.
Draymond,
I made the motion.
Thank you.
with his
Mr.
amendment,
Weaver,
seconded by Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman, Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Okay.
Next would be oral communications.
Okay. Okay. In fact, it is part one of oral communications, the 3-minute segment.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to ask staff, are we still looking at doing these announcements like a half hour before regular council meetings? We're getting more and more that are coming in to make announcements. Half hour was supposed to give them adequate time, more than the little we give them. But I mentioned it about 6 months ago.
I'm not sure staff is actively looking at that, but is that
Haven't
something
actually
within the
moved and
mayor's
conferred with the
purview,
mayor on
or is
his-
that going to
on his
require
interest.
Well, that's
action by
that'd be
council?
staff, and then action by council.
That's something as staff, if two council members want staff to look at it, there's a whole policy involved in getting GTV 6 geared up and running before a meeting, whether it's going to be televised or not. Something that's within the purview of staff to bring to council.
And if I may add, in an unofficial survey or inquiry to the regular attendees at the announcement portion of the meetings, I know that Rich Wells, our public information officer, had indicated that most of them said that they would also like to come to make the announcement in addition at the council meeting because they'd like speaking to you specifically, directly to their council members.
Even though we have most of the invites that they're talking about.
They would like to, I guess, look at your faces as they're making their announcements.
Okay.
They want the celebrity of making an in-person appearance.
Well, I don't know if my colleagues go along with it. I'd still like to hear from
Well, when
staff report.
If you wish, we'll put the matter on.
Doesn't mean we're going to do it.
Just need one more.
Mr. Draymond.
Mr. Mayor, when Mr. Weaver raised this issue the last time, I was his second on that. Where it goes, I don't know, and I don't know how I would vote on it once the information, but certainly it's worth looking at.
We'll put it on the agenda.
Very well. The first speakers are Paula Devine, Sandy Schultz, and Jill Lewis. Jill Lewis. Not Joe Lewis. Jill.
Can't read my writing.
No, I'm also a little bit congested, so my pronunciation isn't as good.
I beg your indulgence. My name is Paula Devine from the Commission on the Status of Women, Mayor Najarian, City Council, members of staff. A major mission of the Commission on the Status of Women is to raise awareness and educate our community about violence against women, whether it's domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. The Commission on the Status of Women is proud to support Seroptimist International of Glendale and the extraordinary event that they are about to present this month. I'd like to introduce Sandy Schultz and Jill Lewis to tell you about Body and Sold.
Mayor Najarian, council members, and staff. My name is Sandy Schultz, and we come here tonight to invite you and all those viewing to our upcoming staged reading play called Body and Sold on June 19 at 7 p.m. at Glendale Community College Auditorium. We're very proud, our club, Seroptimist International of Glendale, that we were very instrumental in funding to the tune of $25,000 for the startup costs for Seroptimist International of the Americas Stop Trafficking campaign in 2007. As you know, our club's mission is to improve the lives of women and girls in local communities and throughout the world. And I am so excited that we are finally being able to bring this stage reading play on June 19. Jill has more information.
Thank you, Mayor Najarian and council members. Also, human trafficking is really a human rights issue. And it's not just a worldwide issue. It's a United States issue, and it's a Los Angeles issue, and I think a lot of people don't quite understand that part. Body and Sold is a documentary play based on the actual stories of 8 American teenagers who were either lured, coerced, or forced by traffickers into the sex trade. They also discuss their struggles as survivors and how they go on with their lives. So it is one performance only. It is on June 19th at 7 p.m. And I will tell you that this is going to be a truly unique theater experience. That's all I'm going to say as far as the performance part. It runs just over an hour. Following the performance, there'll be a brief 30-minute panel discussion with two experts in the field, one from the Department of Homeland Security and the other from CAST, which is a local trafficking recovery agency which serves as a model in the United States. And additionally, Councilmember Laura Friedman will be our moderator of our panel discussion. We're going to wrap up the evening with a wine and cheese reception, and it'll be a debriefing opportunity, and all proceeds will go to human trafficking agencies and domestic violence agencies. So I'd like to say very quickly, you can buy tickets for $25 each at the Seroptimus website, and that's www.SOROPTIMIST Glendale.org. Thank you so much. I have some materials for you, and I left flyers on the table, and I'm sorry for taking more than my...
Thank you. Next speakers, Gregory Kalfayan and Shane Vera.
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council, City staff, and audience. My name is Greg Kalfayan, and this is my classmate Shane Vera. We're both juniors at Hoover High School, and we both play trumpet in Hoover's Jazz Band. And we're here to make an announcement for our June 12 Hooverstock concert.
Hooverstock is our annual end-of-the-year concert featuring the jazz band and rock groups. It's the biggest concert of the year. Everyone comes, people dance, and it's a lot of fun. However, Hooverstock is extra special this year because Mr. Kupka's last year as musical director. He began teaching at Hoover in 1993 and has led the jazz group to multiple national championships. Hoover has won more major awards than any other high school jazz program in the nation. So he's done a lot for us, and we want to give him a great send-off by making the concert the best one yet.
So the jazz ensemble will be performing in the Hoover Auditorium, and the rock bands will be performing in the Little Theater. And when you buy a ticket, you'll be able to move freely between the auditorium and the theater to see the groups that you're interested in listening to. And again, the concert will be June 12th. It's a Saturday at 6:30 p.m. We're really looking forward to performing, and it's definitely not an event to miss. Hope to see you there.
Thank you. Colin Bogart. Hi.
Mayor Najarian, council members, city staff, good evening. My name is Colin Bogart. I'm with the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition, working here in the city of Glendale in partnership with the city. I'd actually like to introduce Mr. Walter Alvarez with the Community Services and Parks Department, as they have a very special role in tonight's announcement.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, Mayor Najarian, council members, city staff. Thank you for the opportunity. Just like to announce and invite everyone out in the community to attend the 10th annual LA River Ride, which is coming up on June 6th. June 6th of this year at the Autry Center in Griffith Park. We partnered with the LA Bicycle Coalition this year, and we'll be hosting a number of rides this coming year. Various rides for specific skill level and age level, which will include a century ride, as well as a 70-mile ride, a half-century ride, a 36-mile training ride, and also a 15-mile family ride. And that's something we definitely would like to encourage all families to come out to. And courtesy of our department, kids 12 and under will be able to ride free in this family ride, as well as also participate in the Kids Ride and Fun Fair. At the Kids Ride and Fun Fair, kids will be introduced to important bike safety lessons through fun interactive activities. So once again, we just want to thank LA Bicycle Coalition as well, because with this partnership, the coalition donated 22 bicycles to needy youth in the community. So we were able to, through our Youth and Family Services program, we targeted nonprofit agencies, and they went ahead and referred needy kids to receive these bikes, not only bikes, also helmets to enforce and introduce them and keep focusing on the safety riding in the community, safe riding in the community. And all proceeds will definitely benefit the LA County and safe to make LA County safer for the community. All proceeds will be donated to all those agencies that will promote safety in the community of Glendale. And once again, just thank you for the opportunity, and definitely would like to encourage all of you to be out there and all members of the community. Thank you for the opportunity today. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
If I may add really quickly, if people want more information, they can go to www.la-bike.org, or they can call 213-629-2142. And once again, children 12 and under can do this ride for free, and we really would love to see lots of Glendale kids and kids from all over come to this ride, and lots of happy, smiling faces. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Timothy Catledge. And come on up, Mr. Catledge, but I know it's been a while since you've been here.
I don't know if it's an announcement.
And this first section of oral communications is 3 minutes only, but it's for community announcements. So if you have an opinion that you'd like to express...
Till the 5 minute?
Yeah, it's best if you wait for the 5 minute, which will be at the end of our agenda, and it shouldn't be too late this evening.
Okay.
I'll make sure this gets to 5 minutes. Joe Ness, followed by Casey Lowe.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members and staff and the community. I am Joe Ness. I'm representing this evening the Glendale Educational Foundation student, and speaking to you tonight about the student showcase, which is coming this very weekend, Friday, June 4th at 6:30 p.m. at the Alex Theater. Tickets are $10 at the door. First and foremost, this is a fine opportunity to showcase our outstanding student artistic talent to a larger public than their own schools. Now, this is our 4th year of doing this. It is also a fundraiser for support of the Foundation's ongoing Glendale Unified School District programs in the visual and performing arts, health, physical education, and science technology. Sponsors for the show are the city, you, Glendale Arts, Glendale Unified School District, Glendale Association of Realtors, the Cameron Fund, Glendale News Press, and Woodbury University. From 11 schools, there are about 200 students performing on the stage in music, dance, and theater. Even more will have their artwork on display, and I know the jazz band that these young men were talking about will be one of the pieces of the program with Craig Kupka. This is truly a cooperative effort for our students in the organization of the event. The evening's outstanding and famous masters of ceremonies are your own Bill McFall and GUSD's...
That's a stage name.
Famous, yes. Yes. Dr. Michael Escalante will be his partner. Wranglers, that means those adult volunteers who are directing groups backstage and in the theater, include members from the Foundation Board, GUSD educators and administrators, as a matter of fact, PTA, and others from the community. The Alex Theater staff plays a very mountainous part in this endeavor. You are cordially invited to attend, and I know some of you are going to be present besides Mr. McFall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Casey Lowe.
Sorry. I have a few flyers, if anybody would like to have one.
Right. Casey Lowe.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, and staff. I'm Casey from Senator Carol Liu's office, and I'd just like to give you all a quick update on a couple of events from the Senator's office. First of all, we're going to be having a free workshop for seniors on consumer education and fraud prevention next Saturday, June 5th, at the Joslin Adult Center in Burbank. It will be from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Now, more than ever before, with our growing number of older adults and with the economic downturn, it is just so critical that we protect our seniors and their assets. So we really urge you all to come out to this event. We're going to have a really great panel. We'll have speakers from the State Department of Corporations, the State Pharmacy Board, and they'll be flying down from Sacramento to give presentations. We'll also have local representation from LA County Adult Protective Services, LA County Consumer Affairs. So it's going to be a very strong panel, and we like to extend this invitation to everybody here who's watching and listening. And I also have some flyers that I'll leave out there for anybody to pick up. And secondly, we have our 11th annual Women in Business Luncheon. That will be on July 16th. That's a Friday. And that's going to be at the Pasadena Hilton. We'll be honoring a number of women, outstanding women in our community, several of which are from Glendale. And this is done jointly with Assemblymember Portantino, representing the 44th Assembly District, and usually with an Assembly member from 43rd District, which is now currently vacant. So we hope that you'll all join us for that as well. And that's it from me. Thank you for your time. Have a great night.
Thank you. Leon Mayer?
Thank you, Mayor Najarian, members of the council, staff. My name is Leon Mayer. I'm here on behalf of the Friends of the Library and on behalf of the library itself. And I was at the memorial services yesterday, and I'm not involved with the presentation or the planning or anything, and I would hope that there would be something specific that could be passed on by the city to the Chamber of Commerce, because I know how hard they work to make everything real nice. I will say this without making any further comment. After the service, my wife and I, my wife's Hispanic, we went over to the Barbosa Flores family, talked to them, and there were roses being presented to them, I believe, by a Boy Scout or Girl Scout group, and everybody should at least know that. As far as upcoming events, we've just finished bringing 3 or 4 or 5 outstanding authors known around the country to the library, and for the summer we're toning down a little bit. On the 16th of June, I don't know if we have it up on the screen yet, on the 16th of June, we're having Stephen and Harrison Stark, who've written the book World Cup 2010, The Indispensable Guide to Soccer and Geopolitics. And these 2 brothers are as good as the ESPN analysts. This should be a great program for anybody who has any interest whatsoever in soccer and international soccer. I know AYSO is finished for the season, but we're attempting to contact AYSO, and even the young people who are interested in soccer should bring their parents to this event. It's June 16th, 7 o'clock at the Glendale Central Auditorium. Of course, it's free parking across the street at the structure there on Maryland. Now, we have another program, June 15th. A lady by the name of Michelle Hunavin has written a book called Blame, and she is also talking about writing novels in these attention deficit times. Now, I don't know what she means by attention deficit, whether she's talking about our whole civilization here or whether it's something more specific, but that is June 15th, Tuesday at 7 o'clock at the Central Auditorium at the library. And we're having something very interesting at one of the Chevy Chase branch library, and that is on June 12th, Saturday afternoon, 3 to 4, and we're going to have one of the local teachers from Glendale College, Glendale Community College instructor Jessica Groper, and she's going to talk about why do vampires sparkle. And this is going to be a very interesting program, and this is just one in a series of Twilight fans. So we hope you can join us for some of these events, and I have flyers that I'll give to anybody who raises their hand. Otherwise, I'll leave them on the desk outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Al Hoffman?
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, council members and staff, and especially the public. I'd like to announce our Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council meeting this next Monday at 7 p.m. at the Boy Scout headquarters on Grandview and Glen Oaks. It's across from the cemetery out there. We had a bit of a snafu. We were going to meet in the planetarium, and Dr. Lindsay was going to be our speaker. Unfortunately, she had to go to a fundraising event, which I would say would be more important than that. And unfortunately, the head of the planetarium thought the whole thing was off. I was out of town for almost a month, and after going through my 355 emails when I got back, I missed out his email, and we got a new program. Stephanie Wright from the planning department is going to be there speaking about the Green Building Task Force, which she's organizing, and looking for support from the coordinating council. And also Officer Zakarian has stepped in, and he's going to give a presentation on National Night Out for this year. And since we're dark in July and August, this will be his last opportunity to speak to us about that important event. So you're all invited to come. It's 7 o'clock Monday evening at the Boy Scout headquarters. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards for this portion of oral communications, so we will move on.
Mr. Mayor, at 8, under action items, at 8A is Director of Administrative Services Finance regarding the third quarter financial update and adjustments to the adopted 2009-2010 budget. At 8A1 is a resolution of appropriation amending the adopted 2009-2010 budget.
Okay. Who are we going to go to?
There we go.
Mr. Starbird?
I'm going to go to Bob Elliott, Director of Finance, for the report. Bob.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we're presenting the third quarter financial update, which is through March of this year, and the status and some of the adjustments that we're seeking approval on. Just to remind everybody, 2009-10 general fund budget, how we got there, the adjustments and the strategies we put into play to get to the $164 million general fund budget that we adopted last June. As we discussed at the mid-year a few months ago, our revenues are still tracking lower than our estimate was by about $3.6 billion, primarily sales tax and construction-related permit fees, along with interest on our investments. Our interest rate has dropped to, I believe, 1.9% on our $400+ billion portfolio, so our earnings have slid from our original estimates. The good news is our expenditures are tracking a little less than what you would think at 3/4 of the year. At 75%, we're about 71%, primarily due to our hard hiring freeze and some of the other cost reduction strategies that we have put in place. Going into the adjustments that we are seeking, there's a lot of large numbers here, but let me break it down. Primarily, a lot of these are what we're calling accounting changes, and I'll go into those each individually, but we have a $11 million appropriation for the Housing Assistance Fund, $3.2 million for the Sewer Fund, $120,000 for the Electric 100,000 for the Water Fund, and 40,000 for the Hazard Material Fund. Moving on to the internal service funds, $7 million appropriation in the medical insurance fund and $2.2 million in the fleet fund, and I will get into the specifics of those in a minute. The other categories that we're looking into are transfers between funds. General fund transfer of $2.7 million to the internal service funds, and another $5 million transfers to the internal service funds, and that's to deal with our internal service fund deficits that we discussed briefly during the budget session, and I'll talk about that more in detail in a minute. A true additional appropriation requests are in the CIP fund for $65,000 and $51,000 in the parking fund, $39,000 in the sewer fund, and $45,000 in the refuse fund. Going into the specifics, basically the accounting change that we're seeking the appropriation for is a requirement by HUD and how we actually account for the housing vouchers. We used to just treat it more or less as a pass-through. They're now asking us to treat it as revenue and expenditures. So really there's no additional money involved with this. It's just how we're treating it. So we have to have an appropriation to treat it as an expense. Enterprise funds, during the negotiations with LA Hyperion and some of the other issues from that agreement that we have with them, the decision was made to change the depreciation useful lives of some of the infrastructure from 100 years to 40 years. This necessitated a larger depreciation, hence a request for appropriation to cover that depreciation expense. In some of the vehicles, and I'll discuss it here, the $120,000 in GWP for 2 forklifts, we put most of the vehicle purchases, unless it was absolutely mandatory, on hold while we developed the fleet fund 601 last year and hired a fleet manager. So we held in abeyance most of the vehicle purchases, and a lot of the appropriations for those replacements lapsed. We're now kind of getting caught up with some of those replacements. This is one of those that we're seeking appropriation now. Water is asking for $100,000 to replace an emergency water pump, and the hazard material fund is requesting money to replace 2 pickup trucks. Again, same discussion on the fleet fund. What we talked about briefly during the budget study session, and I think we touched upon it last December when we presented the CAFR to the City Council, was the deficits that have materialized in a number of our internal service funds: the insurance fund, the workers' compensation fund, the benefits fund, and the retiree health savings plan. We have been working with the City Manager's office to come up with some strategies on how to address those issues and make our auditors, our outside auditors, happy in terms of the statement that they put in the management letter last year. And I'll get into the specifics on that in a second. Again, the fleet management fund, we're asking for $2.2 million in appropriation for police vehicles. I think there was 18 squad cars that we purchased and a number of pickup trucks that we basically let the appropriations lapse as we put the fleet fund together last year. Getting back to address the deficit issue in the internal service funds, one of the strategies was taking, in a sense, prepaying and moving funds over to the internal service funds to address the deficits now, and leave those increases out of the general fund operating budgets for 2010-11. In doing so, we're not raising the rates that these funds charge the general fund operating departments, and we're proposing that we do a lump sum transfer now to prepay those and help the cash position as of the end of this year. Additionally, so in doing so, what would the general fund look like if we make that transfer? If you recall, we ended the year approximately $55 million in general fund reserves. If we transfer the $2.7 million out to address the deficits, our projected revenues and expenditures for this year will net us a slight surplus of $1.4 million, and we'll still end the year at 33% of estimated reserve percentage in the general fund. So we can safely do this transfer and not fall below our floor of 30%. Debt service funds, the transfer, it's the same issue. It's basically in the police building fund, there's still about $44 million in cash. That was part of the financing strategy when we built the building. We are proposing to move $5 million from that project fund and distribute it to the 4 internal service funds that you see listed there, again, to address the deficit position that has accumulated over the last several years. This, again, would help the situation in the internal service funds and provide those funds with some working capital. In addition to these transfers, we have raised the rates and will over a planned 10-year increase on those on these functions to the operating departments outside of the general fund. And some of the other improvements, we're asking for $65,000 appropriation to fund some of the tax defaulted property purchases that the city has made. And again, some other cleanup, $51,000 for wireless fees for the parking fund, the sewer fund, and the refuse fund for about the same amounts of money. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't know about my colleagues, but this was a rather quick presentation on issues that I wish I had a little more time to get into. What is the criticalness of this? Does this need to be approved today?
In terms of?
Is this just a report, or are we approving these transfers?
No, we're asking for the appropriation approval.
Yeah, I mean, you've covered, I'll be honest, as soon as I got my head around, slide number 3, I looked up and we were at slide number 6. So it is, this is not really the way I'd like to go through this. I don't know how my colleagues feel, Mr. Draymond.
Mr. Mayor, when is our next scheduled budget study session?
You actually have, you're done with your study sessions. You have you've held a public hearing?
On the 15th.
So public hearing is on the 15th, and adoption follows that.
22nd.
I'm a very firm believer in all city council members, even our mayor, having the time to look and study and, more importantly, ask questions to get clarification on issues related to the budget. Is there a time when we could add this to our agenda as a special meeting?
Sure.
Afternoon?
Sure. In fact, we can bring it, not sure we could add it to, let's see, we've got absence next Tuesday. I think we could probably do it on the 15th. They need to be, the accounting entries need to be made before the end of the fiscal year for the close of the budget, but any time before then, we can certainly do it at your pleasure.
Is there a regular Tuesday council?
We could do it in the afternoon as we've done our budget study sessions and bring it to you, say, on the 15th. I don't think we have all of you on the 8th, which would be your next meeting. So it would be the 15th.
Mr. Mayor, would that satisfy?
I think I would certainly appreciate a chance to look at it on the 15th.
I have two questions. If we don't make these adjustments, what happens?
We would end the year with some variances in the various funds, but, I mean,
Let me add, as Bob went through these, we tried to categorize these into ones that are budget adjustments. They're actually just accounting changes, for example, and they're among the largest ones.
That's what I'm used to seeing.
Yeah, let's take the change in the housing assistance fund. There's really no impact on budget. It's a way in which we're accounting for the funds. We previously did it as a pass-through. HUD is requiring we recognize the funds that come to us for the LA City transfers as a revenue and an expenditure. So that has to be adjusted in your budget for that purpose, because now we're recognizing a revenue and also recognizing an expenditure. The amount of money we receive hasn't changed, and the way we handle it hasn't changed. So we've broken these into ones that we felt would be fairly easy, put it that way, which are really accounting changes, which are not having a net impact on the budget. I think the ones that you probably want to focus on for the most part are the adjustments to our internal service funds. We're recommending, for example, the transfers from the general fund to support the 6 internal service funds, and the transfer from your COPS fund, which is the COP bonds we use to fund the police building, and transfer into the internal service funds for the same purpose.
I want to finish on my question.
Sorry.
Then, well, isn't this what we see at the last meeting or something, the adjustments we see from these funds over into these funds? It's in a chart. You spread it out here and discussed it. And it comes in latter June, adjustments internally.
Actually, we've traditionally done we've done these same adjustments in the third quarter of the budget as well, anticipating the close of the budget,
right. Then
follows about a month later. Now, what you have in the resolution approving them, I think, is the actual journal entries that show the from and the to of the various
right,
accounts.
That's what I'm talking about.
We've tried to describe it here in a narrative fashion, so you're not just looking at the accounting entry in the resolution. But the resolution would actually have the to and the from, as you've been accustomed to saying.
If we do wait, have this, what additional information are you going to provide us that will be pertinent to a discussion?
Well, that's really up to you, and we and you need to make sure you're comfortable with these changes. The numbers are large. For the most part, the largest numbers relate to changes in the way in which the same amount of money has been accounted for in the past, as opposed to how it will be in this year's budget for various accounting purposes. I think the most substantive of these changes are the recommended transfers for the purpose of making sure we have adequate balances in our 6 or 7 internal service funds. And that's where you'd be drawing on the general fund reserve, as well as the funds that have been set aside to service the police building bonds. And we've done a complete financial review of that and take you through as much of that as you'd like to see. So you do need to be comfortable with this. If you need more time to review it, we'll be happy to bring it back to a study session and get more fully into it.
Frank?
Yeah, I'd like to have a study session on it. I do have a question on the medical insurance fund, $845,000. Is that also a shift in accounting, or are we having to add an extra $845,000 to our medical insurance fund?
Oh, that's just for additional premiums in costs, yes.
Okay, so that's an increase then.
Mr. Draymond?
I would only want to add that it's not so much whether or not I think any of us are suggesting we would vote to approve or not approve. I think it's a matter of, as the city manager mentions, there's some large amounts of money here, and it's just having this firmly in mind when we do so. And unless, Mr. Elliott, what you're suggesting is that between now and the 15th, something would fall out of balance, I would support the mayor and Councilmember Quintero in asking that we just touch back on this one more time.
Fine, we'll do that.
Yeah, and we certainly can do that. Just to be extra clear, most of these adjustments that we're asking for pertain to this budget year. It is a little unusual, but the transfers that we're proposing from the general fund and the COP funds are really, in a sense, to pre-fund the internal service funds for next budget year. That strategy was to reduce the increase to the operating departments for next year's budget. So the thought was doing the transfers this year and get it out of the way, and get those funds balances as of the end of this year for reporting purposes with the auditors. But yeah, we'll be happy to discuss any of these.
And that can all occur provided the action is taken before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do that.
So this will be in no action. put over till the 15th?
15th.
I did not have any cards to speak on this item in any event. Let's move on to 8B.
At 8B is Director of Community Planning regarding update on North Glendale Community Planning motion. At B1 is motion accepting North Glendale Community Plan Advisory Committee recommendations and directing staff to proceed with the work program. At B2 is motion directing staff to return with a proposal to prepare an economic market and feasibility study concerning the Foothill Corridor with options.
Mr.
And I'll go to Hassan Agani, Director of Community Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Starbird. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is an important, we're going to report an important milestone in preparing the North Glendale Community Plan. In a minute, Laura Stotler and Emil Tatavosian will give into the heart of the presentation. But I must say that this is the culmination of months of work and a lot of time and diligence that the community members who've worked with staff have put into this. Tonight, the community plan is part of the general plan its intent is to be broad, to work as the basis for other documents that could be more specific. Sometimes we get confused about what we're producing. The general plan works as a constitution based on which other documents will come out of. So to the extent that you get comments about how specific it is or it isn't, Laura, at the end of her presentation, will explain the other documents will come out of this. With that, I'd like to ask Laura Stotler to come and do her presentation of this report. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Najarian, council members and staff. My name is Laura Stotler, and I'm here to do the presentation of the North Glendale Advisory Committee recommendations, but I'd really like to acknowledge the hard work of the Advisory Committee. They spent hours and hours of work creating these recommendations, looking at a variety of difficult topics, and I just think it really an acknowledgement of their work has to be made. Let's see if I can get this to work here.
I think that's too
It's not
far.
going to, it's too far? Next. This is the area we're talking about. It's the area of North Glendale. That's essentially the area in Glendale and La Crescenta Valley. Next, or Crescenta Valley. In October 2008, the council asked us to go and meet with the community to talk about some of the issues that were coming up at a variety of community meetings. Based on that, staff talked to the community, came back with a proposal to council in December 2008 to prepare a community plan. And as the first part of that process was going out and meeting with the public, from January to May, we met with the public. We reported back in June of 2009. And when we reported back, we had some issues where there were some community disagreements and decided to form an advisory committee to talk about those areas where there were community disagreements. Next. And this is the purpose of the advisory committee. We didn't talk about all topics. It's really where we discovered where, in our community meetings, we just did not have agreement. And we attempted to form an advisory committee that would have a wide range of community opinions, a wide audience. And the goal was really to try and reach consensus on those issues where we could, but at least explore the issues so we could clearly identify it for the council. Next. Our advisory committee was made up of 35 members. I think at the end it sort of dwindled down to about 16 that were the hardcore members that showed up to every meeting. We had a broad cross-section. Not only did we have city residents and business owners, property owners, we also had representatives from various boards and commissions. Next. And over the summer we actually held 8 meetings and followed by 2 additional ones to craft the recommendations. And the first thing that the advisory committee did was came up with a vision statement. I know it's long and it is on the cover of the recommendations, but they felt this was critical to their mission and critical to what they felt was necessary for a review of any project that goes into the North Glendale community. Next. Some of the topics that were looked at by the advisory committee, they considered the historic development, looked at old and new, how has the community changed over the years. They held walking tours. We held walking tours of Spar Heights. And then we also held walking tours of Foothill Boulevard. You get to see not only what you can see from the car, but then also what you see from the street. It's quite a different view from the same, that was just the same property. really gives you a different opinion of what's on the street there. Again, those walking tours were held not only after work, but they're also held on the weekends to give people an opportunity to participate. The public was invited to them too. We also looked at some transportation issues, particularly on Foothill, but also in the general area. We focused on landscaping, transit, bicycle lanes and routes, coordination with LA County and LA City. That was raised as an issue for the community, and also past history of development. And some of the things we looked at cross sections. There was concern about the driveways and the businesses that were up there. They talked about the zoning, particularly heights on Foothill, setbacks, buffers, differences between the north and south side of the street because of topography. And then when it came to Foothill, we also looked at what does the community really want to see on the street. So we had discussions about maintaining access to businesses, curb extensions for pedestrian safety. They were looking at completing bikeways that would match LA County's and also match the city's 1995 bikeway master plan. And a big topic, beautification. So I said looking at providing landscaping where we can along sidewalks, landscape, perhaps islands where appropriate. The goal, again, to maintain access to businesses. Also potential perhaps for landscape medians if and where feasible. And for those community discussions, we had Public Works there to talk to the individual community members. We had John O. Tom Mitchell, we had Rubic Alanian, we had Catherine Engel, we had Colin Bogart. So we had the staff that the community really needed to talk to make informed decisions. And when it came to funding, they brought up that issue too. How do you actually pay for improvements? And when we talked to the committee members, they felt there would be little or perhaps no support for business improvement districts or assessment districts. So that was their opinion. We also had photos that were submitted by our advisory committee members. What issues do you want to solve in your community? So we had issues of height, how that could impact the various buildings and how topography impacts height. Issues of how do you work with downsloping properties that are commercial when you have residential next to it. Issues of is it really design or is it height that's the problem on some buildings. We looked at a variety of cross sections for streets and options for Foothill Boulevard. We also did comparison of standards. We had the Crescenta Valley Community Standards District that was done by LA County. We also have our own design guidelines and zoning. They looked at the comparisons of that, particularly on height, and discussions about design review. And again, these are photos mostly from the committee members. Real focus of their concerns and a lot of the recommendations you'll see in the report relate to design for transition areas, between buildings, between, the next one would be between commercial and residential. Again, commercial and residential. And even some interfacing with our own utility corridors. And the committee also focused on single-family areas. They took a look at the issue of fences and front setbacks, sidewalks, curbs, and streetlights, and house design, and numbers of stories that would be acceptable in the community. And you have recommendations on all these topics in the attached recommendations. And with that, again, the advisory committee recommendations are broken into 4 topics, and all of the advisory committee recommendations fall under those 4 topics. So that's how it's organized. It's not exactly how it was in the June 2009 community meetings that we had. And the main parts that we'd like to focus on are really the competing viewpoints and the suggested actions. We didn't come to complete consensus on everything, but we've outlined where we had disagreements, and then the committee has suggested actions on how to address those. And with that, we've also included in the report proposal, if you would like to consider it, to do an economic study to assess impacts of potential zoning modifications. And then Emil Tatavosian is here.
Right.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Phil. Phil's here to discuss Foothill.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we thought that we would, I'm Philip Lanzafame, Director of Community Redevelopment and Housing. We thought that we would come to you tonight. Some time ago, you had asked us to look at Foothill Boulevard. as a redevelopment project area. We thought this was an appropriate time to come back to you with some preliminary results that we found, because we are talking about that corridor with the study, and it is one of the tools that could be used. In our preliminary review, we did not think that the corridor met the strict definition of blight. There were some instances where it did meet some of the standards, but not to a significant amount. Coupled with that was private investment that has taken place, as you saw in some of the photos. The other kind of element of this goes along with some of the things that Laura just talked about in terms of height. The corridor is a strip of commercial on the north side and on the south side, and then you get right into residential. One of the factors that we would like to look at if you want to move forward with a project area is, do we have enough critical mass to really generate the tax increment in new development that would pay for some of the improvements? I think beautification was kind of top of the list, that people wanted to see that, yet BIDs and assessment districts weren't favored. So those are the two things that, if you wanted to move forward, we could tell you that it's probably a steep and I'm at a loss for words. It would be difficult to find, but we have seen some cases of it. And then if we were able to, would it make an impact such that we could fund some of the improvements that people wanted to see?
And then also the final slide is, we do have recommendations for council. We recommend that you give the planning staff direction to proceed with preparation of a North Glendale community plan. We anticipate that we would have a draft available to start public review in 2010, fall 2010, in several months. We would include, as part of that, design guidelines. And then as a separate report, we would include zoning options that have been outlined in the recommendations. And we would also include a description of a complete streets policy, not only for the Hill, but also for the other major highways in the area. Not only is that something that's desired by the community, it's now also required by state law, so we would want to proceed with that. And then we're also asking that you consider the economic study options that are included in your report. And then I would also like to bring to your attention that we have received a number of emails concerning medians on Foothill. You may have received some of those, and we did note that in the report. We do have a copy of the letters and emails if you're interested in it. We also did receive a letter this morning from Sarah Morrison Hill, and I believe a copy has been distributed to you, so I just want to make sure you have all that information too. And that concludes my presentation. And we do have a number of members from the advisory committee who are here in the audience as well today.
Okay, are there any questions? We do have some speakers. Why don't we go to the speakers, and then we'll discuss it, reconnoiter, exactly. Mike Mohill, Al Hoffman.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm really excited about this plan that the people of the North Crescenta Valley have prepared here. My only comment is, it's kind of late. Why wasn't this prepared years ago? The people in the Crescenta Valley have issues that are different, that are down here in Adams Hill, or in Shoal Canyon, or Rossmoyne area. They're unique. Where I live is unique also. This calls for council districts. A perfect example. If we had council districts, there would be a council person from the Crescenta Valley. He would be sitting up here with his constituents in the audience, asking for their hearing. These hearings, these items should have been talked about years ago. I assume that the reason why this report came about in the first place is because of frustration from the community that this council wasn't addressing. I'm sure that's why I come here, is to address issues that affect me. I live in Glen Oaks Canyon. I'm concerned about the dump site People in Crescendo Valley don't care about the dump site. They don't live there. And that's okay with me. People in Adams Hill want to know why they don't have more parks there. People in South Glendale want to know why we don't have soccer fields. Doesn't affect the people in Crescento Valley. We need 7 council districts with about 30 to 40,000 people in each district, with an elected mayor by the whole community, just like we have here in our neighbor next door, Pasadena, that we like to compare ourselves with often. Let's give this a thought. Let the community think about council districts, because then we can have issues like this, and they would have representation at council. I mean, why did this thing have to come up in the first place? If there was a council district representative sitting right over here, this would have been addressed years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Hoffman, followed by Sharon Weissman.
Mayor Najarian, council members, and staff. First of all, I'd like to recognize Laura and Alan Loomis and the staff for doing a yeoman's job in trying to put this together. And they pointed out that it was hard to get consensus, and that was true. And they were trying to put together comments every meeting. After every meeting, we had to redo them. And I just think they did a great job. What a task that was. I was one of the members, and I actually proposed that we consider a redevelopment area, especially for the south portion of Foothill from Pennsylvania out to about Lauderdale. I mentioned it to Mayor Draymond at one time, or Councilman Draymond. I guess you were mayor at that time. The problem with that south portion, when we did the walk, there just isn't anything you can do. It's so steep going downhill. You can't put parking in the back. God, you'd have to have four-wheel drive vehicles to get up and down in any kind of decent driveway or anything going in the back of these properties. And the redevelopment I was thinking about would have to incorporate and take the properties on the south street, on the north side of the street immediately south to Foothill, in order to put parking entrances and everything down below, parking garages and whatnot. No matter, you can build one-story building on Foothill, and it's still going to be objectionable on the south side to the people that live below. It's just the way the terrain is. And that is a different thing than what other areas in Foothill, like in Lafayette, have to fight. I also proposed that we need to do mixed-use development, and that didn't sit well with a lot of people because I guess they didn't understand. But when we did the walk on Foothill, you hardly see anybody walking on Foothill. It's not a pedestrian-friendly area. And what we need to do is put businesses in with residences above, and now you'll get traffic, and that's what we need to do. Of course, redevelopment money is dried up, and it probably will be many years till we get it, but we need to do the planning now so that when money does become available, that we can jump into it. And I think mixed use would be a real ideal thing to do for Foothill Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Weissman, followed by Bill Weissman.
Hello, Mayor Najarian, council member, staff. I'm Sharon Weissman from far north Glendale. And first I want to thank you all for enabling the staff to spend so much time over the past year or so on this planning effort. And as president of the Far North Glendale Homeowners Group, I can let you know that the residents in that area, that's the area north of Honolulu and between Pennsylvania and Foothill, Pennsylvania and Lowell. So the area above some of the older, more established homeowners groups like the Spar Heights or other areas there. And we appreciate all the work, and we concur with the North Glendale Community Planning Advisory Committee's recommendations, and I hope you'll adopt Motion 8B1. We also discussed a redevelopment area for Foothill Boulevard, and our homeowners group, that's the group that lives all surrounding Foothill Boulevard, does not believe a redevelopment area is appropriate for there, and we urge you not to adopt the motion to study for a redevelopment area in that part of the city. The people who live there don't agree with Mr. Hoffman, particularly those who own the homes on Mary and Mary Ann that he suggested should be included. And I'd also like to mention that Mr. Mohill is also incorrect. People in the Crescenta Valley that I talk to, and I talk to lots of them, care a great deal about all of Glendale. We really appreciate you doing this effort in the north section first, but our understanding was that it's like a prototype, and we'll be the pioneers, and I got some arrows myself through that effort. But just to let you know, we really hope that a similar amount of effort goes into all areas. I don't know how you're going to, logically break them in, however other more sections there will be, but we hope you do just as much as soon as possible to study all the areas. And I want to thank you again. Just because we live up there doesn't mean we don't have involvement. I personally tutor at Casa Verdugo Library, so when Carol Welling brought up a suggestion for medians on that north part of Brand from, say, Glen Oaks up to Mountain, I'm very familiar with the area, and I intend to weigh in when that comes before you. And also, I belong to a group that meets at Pacific Park Library, and we are very concerned about that. And I didn't have time this afternoon to watch, but I want to go hear what happened about the pool in this afternoon's meeting. So not only are we concerned with cross-jurisdictional areas, with the unincorporated area to our east and Southern Tahunga, part of Los Angeles, to our west, we're concerned with all of Glendale, too. And thank you for this effort. And we know we're just in the middle of the process, and we'll continue to be involved as we work out all the details of this. And even though there was not consensus on what all areas of the community are recommending, I can attest that there's a great deal of understanding of the various issues because of all the effort. So thank you again.
Thank you. Bill Wiseman, was your card submitted for general oral communications? Okay, thank you. Sarah Morrison, followed by Jean Maluccio.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. Thank you very much. Again, I want to reiterate that I really appreciate the effort that the city staff put into working on this North Glendale Community Plan Advisory Committee. I participated as a representative of the Whiting Woods Property Owners Association and spent a lot of time discussing these issues and agree. I was educated a lot on the issues facing the city. I did submit, as Laura mentioned, a comment letter this morning. I apologize for the late notice, but I only learned of the meeting last week. So, but I feel that the comments in my letter are really reflective of the prior comments that Whiting Woods Properties Owners Association submitted and hoped would be considered by the advisory committee as part of the recommendations. And some of them were included or are part of the recommendations, but I feel, and the Whiting Woods Property Owners Association feels, that as the city works towards preparing the community plan, we would appreciate consideration of some of the comments we raised. Many of the issues go to sustainability, and there is a lot that's being done in other jurisdictions. There were some measures, and we appreciate the complete streets and some of the other sustainability measures that were included as recommendations, but we think there's more that can be done, and the city can use this as an opportunity to further sustainability efforts as this community plan is sort of the first step, is at least what we understood, in expanding policies for the city as a whole. And the staff report mentioned the preparation of a climate action plan, including sustainability measures in this community plan document can be incorporated into a climate action plan, which will help the city meet its requirements for compliance with the state greenhouse gas reduction measures. And so we think, and I think, that moving forward on more sustainability measures in this community plan would benefit not only the quality of life for the residents in North Glendale, but also benefit the city in its efforts. So I thank you very much for your time, and again, appreciate all of the effort that's gone into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean Maluccio.
Mayor, City Council, I too want to thank you for sending up your staff for the last 2 years. I think we've been working together. Not only did you send them up there to our area in normal times, you sent them up there during the fire, you sent them up there during the flood, so they got quite a taste of what we had going on up there along with us. They've been terrific to work with. I think, I would like to go forward with what we come with. But I think I would also like to mention that we had a lot of residents and a lot of businesses in there together. In the beginning, there was conflict, disagreements, more vocal. But as we went along, all the residents and the businesses learned to work with each other. They learned what the business concerns were. The business learned what the residents thought. And I think out of all of this, it's going to be a much more working relationship. So I thank you for sending them there, and I hope to go forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Herbert Milano.
Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council, my name is Herbert Milano. For a long time, I've been a very strong advocate of ensuring that cities that developed an urban vision and city planning, that those plans be put into effect across all sections of a city. Here we have a section of Glendale that has been, in my opinion, neglected for a very long time. And it is visual. You can see it if you were to take a drive from La Cañada Flintridge and the quality of the roads as you drive east. It is truly an amazing thing to see what La Cañada has done with their area. And I think it's an idea and it's a concept with regard to how a city takes care of its primary thoroughfares. Then as you go into the county section of La Crescenta, you also see a fairly significant upgrade. The roads are wide, high quality, the sidewalks, the library they have out there is just truly fantastic. And then you cross Pennsylvania, and it is a shame to see that the capital improvements have not been done. The road is in disrepair. The sidewalks, the visual look of this area is incredibly bad, relatively speaking to what it is in the other parts. And obviously it gets worse as you go into Tahanga and so forth. A city needs to put into plan and report on a continual basis what it's doing with regard to the quality of life as it pertains to urban planning. A few years ago, we had, maybe 5 years ago, we had some businessmen on Foothill Boulevard who had made a request to have all these electrical utility poles. It looks absolutely third world. It really does. And it is the only section. As soon as you get to the Glendale section, it's almost as if you were moving into Mexico. They came over to basically request that the city fund to put these lines underground. And yet what they received was a bill, some of them for $30,000, as if they had requested to pay for it themselves. I think there's a disconnect that has been going on for a very long time, and I think that because of Councilman Draymond, that we finally had an attention being placed to this area that has long needed it. Now, I know that there are many areas in Los Angeles that are far worse, but I think that the whole idea is to look at what is best surrounding the city and basically move towards a plan that it could be evaluated on a continual basis and put the capital investment there. And I think that's where we're failing in our budget. We're not putting the capital investment into the city because the money is going someplace else. It is my hope that this vision will come to fruition soon. Thank you.
Thank you. David Myers.
David Myers, resident of Glendale. Thank you very much for enabling staff, planning staff specifically, to work with the community on this plan for the last year and a half. It really has brought the whole community together, from residents to property owners, property management, realtors. You can go on and on. You got a whole room full of people that normally would never be together. But together they all have the same vision, and it really is put together in that document as a whole. There's some areas of disagreement, but as a whole document, everybody stands behind this. That was part of this advisory group. I just ask that you carry it forward and enable it to become the general plan amendment, so this community really does have a part in its own future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have any other cards on 8B, so let me throw it open to my colleagues. Okay, Mr. Draymond?
Well, first of all, I am proud of the work that staff did on this project. I don't know if any of my colleagues did, but I did drop in on one of the meetings just to observe and see how it was progressing, how it was unfolding, what kind of interaction there was between staff, how many people were turning out to the meeting, and who they were. I mean, in other words, from what areas and what their interests were. Were they business people from the local area? Were they local residents? Or were they people involved in business and investment from outside of the area who were there to sort of how would I say it, advocate for issues not really related to the area. I saw a little of that. The evening that I attended, there were about 18 attendees outside of city staff, that is, who were there. A few were there who neither owned property, businesses, or were residents of the area, who were there actively sort of trying to muscle a particular viewpoint. But what I mostly saw was, and I see some of the members of that committee there chuckling a little bit. I think they know what I'm talking about. But in any case, for the most part, I saw residents of the area and local businesses and representatives of businesses working very hard together, just exactly as I would have expected from this area, which, of course, is most of you know, is area I call home and where I grew up. I'm also very proud that this began while I was serving as mayor. And I raised the issue because we need to make it very clear, make no mistake, this was not because I was mayor. This city council unanimously agreed that this area would be the first look-see at an overall process of going through the city geographically and trying to make improvements and adjustments as we went. And so I think the word Ms. Wiseman was looking for was guinea pig, if you will. But this is a very unique area. It was not originally a part of the city of Glendale. This was an annexed area. Mr. Milano, you and I don't always agree, but I do agree with you here. This is an area that has been neglected for many, many, many years. It became part of the city in approximately 1952, and I know that in those days my father had established Crescenta Valley Sportswear on Foothill Boulevard in 1949. In 1952, the city of Glendale came along and the zoning changed, and he moved his sewing machine plants to Thompson off of San Fernando Road and ultimately to downtown Los Angeles. But the appearance of the area and the mix of use has really not changed much. The visual of the area is exactly as Mr. Milano describes it. You pass from the county unincorporated portion into the Glendale Annex, and it's night and day. It is night and day. In in terms of road surface conditions, in terms of street trees, in terms of the hideous, absolutely hideous overhead power lines, telephone poles, and so on. It's just awful. And he is also correct when he cites what La Cañada Flint Ridge has done with their section. Having grown up playing right on Foothill Boulevard in the lemon orchards and orange orchards that have now been replaced by strip malls mostly, and watching many of the homes, the residences there, being raised for gas stations and other things over the years. I know that I'm inclined to endorse what has been recommended. I know that there were disagreements along the way, and there are going to continue to be disagreements. I'm extremely proud of the residents of the area and the people who served on this advisory committee to get beyond that. Frankly, Mr. Mayor, just as this council does often, we have some fundamental disagreements on issues, but at some point you put a bookmark there and say, okay, let's move beyond that, see where we do agree. I have to compliment staff for doing an amazing job working with the community. Mr. Hagani, you and your department, Mr. Lansfane, for your inquiry and research with regard to redevelopment areas and so on. It's a remarkable effort. It would not have happened without you, and I'm greatly appreciative, and I know the input I've gotten from community members is the same. But I do believe that we need to make some changes up there. We need something comprehensive in terms of design guidelines. We need something comprehensive in terms of traffic issues, mobility issues, issues related to many of the topics that have been raised here tonight. Greening, sorry to use that word for some of you who've grown when any of us mention it, but this area needs another look at the greening of the area, the sustainability of the area. Ms. Morrison raises at that point. There have been issues, for example, about medians, yes or no. That is not you can't come to a conclusive answer about that. Nonetheless, let's move forward. I advise that we move forward with these recommendations, and those issues will be sorted out in public hearings and through further meetings. Again, I have grown up in the area, so I know what it's like. This is a very close-knit community, as many neighborhoods in Glendale are. Crescenta Valley area is no different. You can sit any 100 business owners and residents of the area down, and you get 300 opinions from those 100 people as to what the best future course should be charted. I am very proud that we've gotten to this point. The only other thing I would ask right now, Mr. Mayor, is if we could turn to Mr. Hagani so that he could clarify exactly where this process came from. It did not come from a cacophony of angry voices from the foothills shouting. It was not that at all. So, if I may, Mr. Hagani, can you just clarify that issue, how this process came forward?
Yes, I'd be happy to. To the best of my recollection, it came forward with as a number of first and foremost, a number of community members actually said that we need to pay attention to design, and then they requested, in fact, to be engaged in a discussion. And we brought it here to council, and the council, in fact, directed us to go ahead and start having a series of meetings with the community to find out what are some of their concerns. And we did that through a series of surveys, and they raised a number of concerns, and we brought the number of concerns to you, and then you directed us to start this community plan approach, if I remember it correctly. If I missed something, I apologize.
Well, I think that's about it. I just wanted the clarification. This was not an angry group of homeowners from the foothills coming down here and demanding that action be taken. Last comment, Mr. Mayor, is that, growing up in the area, what a lot of businesses and a lot of residents feel is that when the landlord lives a long way away, well, the good news is when you live in the Crescenta Valley, or you own a business there, the good news is the landlord lives a long way away. You pretty much are left alone. The bad news is that when you need upgrades and compatibility and attention to design, the bad news is that the landlord lives a long way away. And I applaud the move, the coming together, or the closeness that's developing between the foothill, the community of the Crescenta Valley, the communities, Montrose, La Crescenta, Spar Heights, Montecito Park, and so on, Verdugo City, and our planning effort, and the planning department of the city of Glendale. So I endorse the recommendations. This is not an ending point, though. This is a beginning point, a jumping off point. So.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver?
You put your hand up first.
Mr. Quintero?
I'll go next. Well, as you said earlier, this is the end of the beginning. I also want to thank the staff and the advisory committee. I know how many meetings they had and how hard they worked, and as usual, Mr. Hagani and his staff, I think, have done a great job of bringing people together, the residents, the property owners, business owners, et cetera, and certainly come a long way, and it's almost inspiring when you read the report, all of the different topics that were touched and how people coalesced around agreeable points. So this is the beginning. I think there's plenty of work that still needs to be done, unfortunately, for the advisory committees and others who are going to continue to be involved. But I do think it's about design guidelines, about mobility, about sustainability. There's still a lot to do, so we can, quite frankly, get up to the La Cañada standards, because you absolutely notice a big difference as you cross the different jurisdictions, and it shouldn't be like that. The Crescenta Valley is one geographic location that happens to have political divisions, but it's one geographic location, and the more we tie all of the different political jurisdictions together, the better off the residents will be. In terms of the redevelopment issue, I personally don't think it rises to a redevelopment zone. I don't believe the blight is there, and in a sense I also think it could be counterproductive. I'm just afraid there's a lot of small parcels, and I'm afraid that some of the smaller property owners somehow are going to be either intimidated or so for me personally, the zone or the redevelopment aspect of it, I'm not interested in pursuing that, but I am interested in pursuing modifying zoning and some of the other things I mentioned, and that's Foothill. Now, for the rest of this study, there's a lot of work to be done there, Spar Heights especially, and of course the Montrose shopping district, but I think Foothill, in a sense, may be the most difficult bit of work that we still have to do. And it will happen over time, but at least we're taking the right steps. But just to give you an idea of how things change when people get a chance to interact and talk, when Anna Walt Lumber was, or rather when the other Foothill Lumber, when they were going through all that project, I got to know quite a few of the homeowners in the adjoining streets, and physically went into their homes and looked at the at that subject property. Then I also got to meet a few business owners. One of the business owners is actually someone that I've known for quite a while, and when he got wind of this study, et cetera, he felt very threatened. He called me and anyway, let me know that medians were out of the question, recalls would be in order, et cetera, et cetera. And so anyway, and he spoke for a few people. But what I found quite comical, he didn't think it was funny, but I sure did. I said, well, look, all we want to do is we want to just landscape the area. We want to make it greener. We want it to look nicer, plant trees, et cetera. And the gentleman told me, if you want to see trees, go to a park. Okay? I'll never forget that. Boy, every time I see him, I'm going to be bringing that up. So that person, think about that mindset versus some of the other people that were in this advisory committee. So anyway, it's a tribute to the staff that all of this, he, I think, eventually has signed on to the idea. So anyway, thank you very much for all the hard work. You deserve kudos for all the time that you spent, and we'll just continue pushing until we get it accomplished. But we're certainly headed in the right direction.
Mr. Weaver.
Well, I grew up in Glen Oaks Canyon, but my best friend lived up on Santa Carlotta in the northern sector. I was up there every weekend. It was back in the 50s. Totally different city back in the 40s and the 50s when I was growing up. What I knew, at least in those days, and some degree today, a lot of people there like the way the area is. They don't want Big Brother down here, downtown in Glendale, coming up there and starting to make too many radical changes. At times change, yes, and you have to progress with change. I think that what a lot of people like adjustments other than the zoning are the small things, landscaping, better looking streets, whatever. That's all normal, and that's what this process is about. Two things, one on the streets. I do know that I believe Foothill is the main drag through La Cañada Flintridge. Main drag in Glendale has been Brand or Broadway. So, yes, La Cañada Flintridge beautified their main drag. And here's us here in the county. Well, that can be changed, that can be improved. It only takes money. All we have to do is come up with a lot of money. We can rezone. That doesn't take money. It takes hearings. Landscaping, whether you put medians in or not, whether you put trees or not, it's all about money after you've all settled on what you want. And I think that's where we're trying to get to, is what do you want where? The La Crescenta area is totally different than down here. It's hilly. You're dropping down in grades. How you zone those areas for heights of buildings, so on, it's different than down here. So you have to look at, because people up there are looking down at a nice view, clear to the ocean on a good day, and you certainly don't want to put in zoning that blocks views and changes the character of the area up there. I do not think the people up there want to see big businesses coming in, Walmarts, things like that. My God, we'd be crucified for something like that. And I think as land has gotten more expensive, and they're being driven out of down here, they've started to look up there. Oh, look at all this cheap land, relatively speaking. And we've seen that over in the Anawalt, or the Foothill Lumber. All of a sudden, they're trying to propose something, the community erupts. That was a trigger point to get us going down here on something. We do not want this. Please rezone this area. Don't let this happen. And that's what we're going to have to start dealing with. But I've sat here, I'm in my 14th year, and I've sat here and many, many times heard people get up here and say, we're not putting enough money into the area south of the 134 freeway. When are you going to start spending money there? Oh, gee, now I'm hearing, when are we going to start spending money up there? I'm sitting here saying, where is the money? You can't do everything. We spend probably over $40 million south of the 134 freeway now. Not nearly like that up in the La Crescenta area. Gosh, how many streets up there don't even have sidewalks? Curbs, gutters. Try to tell people we're going to take some of that land that we might own, but it's undeveloped, and say we're going to tear it all out and we're going to put curbs, gutters, and sidewalks in. It would erupt again. You're changing the whole character of our area. We don't want that. Stay away. So we're going to have all these discussions, lively discussions. I think we're going to have to break it down and take it segment by segment as it goes along. Not for now, because we're We've just begun to do what we have to do. I do remember over my time sitting here and hearing people come in and say, we want to underground the utilities up on Foothill. Right. And I sat here and I listened to staff say that would be an extremely expensive undertaking, millions and millions of dollars. And guess what? Every homeowner would have to pay the extension in the thousands of dollars, taking it from the street where the city owns and plumb it into the commercial buildings and into the homes. And unanimously, that was turned down. No, you'll never be able to do it. Look around downtown here. How many places do you see have telephone poles? All over. We don't do that anymore because of the extremely expensive cost of doing it. That's just the reality. When we become a very wealthy city, we can talk about those kind of things. And if you look since the mid-'60s, all development coming in, no poles, because the law changed and in came developers, they had to underground all the utilities. But this city's been here since the 1900s. And all that came in was above ground. There just isn't enough money to put everything under. So I know the people up there wants change, but it's the degree of change that you want that's acceptable to you. Cosmetic changes, like the landscaping, bike lanes, things like that, can be accommodated. Well, we want all the utilities underground. Now you're really hitting us where you're not going to find the feasibility to do it. But when you talk about medians and other things, it's going to take staging to find out where it can work. Where can you plant trees in a median as opposed to on sidewalks? You're going to work your way through all this. And you have any idea how many times different elements of this are going to be coming to this council or the next council?
That we expect again and again to be
Again and again and
revisited.
again, and you're going through the planning commission. This is going to be a long process. But I think the whole thing was all triggered by Foothill lumber. When that started, you all saw the impacts of what was going to happen up there, what the future held for you. And it will if a council doesn't sit here and make the changes as soon as possible, especially in the zoning. So I thank all of you that have done the legwork being out there, and I wish you the best in all the more meetings you're going to have out there with the staff. But I think you have 5 council members that sit here and will be listening intently to try to do what most of you want, because there will be some that won't like it, but that's just the way it is. We'll listen and we'll try to do the best for all of you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. My comments are pretty much in line with everything that's been said before. This is a process. This is a dynamic process. And I think what we can say is in the meetings that have been held up to this point, we've identified the interested stakeholders and gotten their basic areas of concern. I dare say that the tougher job lies ahead in the next few meetings, or next few series of meetings where you're actually going to be putting details to these concepts and try and present the different sides and the different opinions, perhaps trying to find consensus, perhaps, as Mr. Weaver said, throwing it up to us or the Planning Commission for some additional input. And it's good planning. I mean, we should be fortunate, we are fortunate that we've got a planning staff and a council and residents that realize the benefits of good planning. And this is what it is. It's not easy. You have to sit down, talk to everyone, find out what the concerns are, look at what the conditions are on the ground, so to speak, and match that to your vision. So I fully support everything the planning staff has been doing. One slight question I have is, we'd adopted some Foothill Boulevard design guidelines last year, perhaps a year and a half ago. Will those then be folded into this plan?
We will be full. We actually have the county portion has adopted their design guidelines, but you have given us some directions, policy directions on the design guidelines. Yes, they will be folded into them, and they are consistent with some of the recommendations that the advisory committee has given.
Okay. I appreciate everyone's work, and as I said, I think the greater challenges lie ahead, and this is a template for all the other areas and zones in the city. So the lessons that we learn in the North Glendale Advisory Committee meetings, we can use through the other areas. I think there are 4 or 5 study areas, I think, and
just about, yes.
And I think the other meetings will be perhaps a little more easier once we've learned out where the rough edges are in this stage. Mr. Draymond.
Mr. Mayor, there was one note that I made here while I was listening to the public that I forgot to cover, and that was in response to Ms. Weissman, who said she missed the meeting this afternoon and wanted to know about the issue down at Pacific Edison with regard to the pool. My note was, Ms. Weissman, start shopping for a swimsuit.
We're going swimming.
Mr. Mayor?
Very good. Mr. Weaver.
I know what we've all agreed here on, which is 8B1. But 8B2 is talking about an economic study. I'm trying to figure out if we want to do that yet. I haven't heard enough.
Is the economic study regarding the creation of a project area?
Well, either
there was 2
one more.
components. Mr. Mayor, sorry, there were 2 components in the draft motion. One was to consider or look at the potential for a redevelopment project area. The second is to study the viability of Foothill Boulevard as a commercial corridor and potential effects of zoning height modifications on the corridor. So there's 2 components to that. You could adopt that motion as it is, or you can take one of those items out.
Is that 8B2 you're talking
That's
about?
correct.
That's part of 8B2.
Part of 8B2. It's 2 components.
The 2 again are?
Redevelopment, and then the effects of studying the viability of Foothill as a commercial corridor, and then the effects of the zoning on the corridor.
Shouldn't we get the zoning in line first before we do that?
Yeah, I mean,
we already talked
AB2
about redevelopment.
Let's go to Mr. Harani.
AB2 would do that.
We actually are looking at 3 potential options for zoning based on the recommendations of the advisory committee. And if you were to have an economic analyst do an analysis, we would give them those scenarios, and then when we come back to you with specific zoning recommendations, we can even, along with that, we can tell you what the economist has said with regard to the viability of those options. Or we could wait and give you those the final option that the community prefers, and then follow up with a study.
I just see if they go and do the study, all that time and effort, and then come back, we pick one. We already had the recommended plan, and then cost it. It makes sense rather than going on to 3. I mean, as if the results of the economic study is going to take us one way, which might be opposing what the public wants. I don't know.
Tell you what, let's do the easy one first. Let's do 8B1.
I'll move that.
Second.
Let's take roll call.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman, Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Now 8B2, as we learned, there's 2 components to it.
Redevelopment, Mr. Quintero's against it, I'm against it.
My only comments on that is I'm not against it, but the opinion of Mr. Lanzafame weighs heavily on me that we would most likely not be successful in trying to get that. I think there's a lot of benefits to creating a redevelopment project area, mainly more capital to be infused, but if you don't think it's going to fly, I'm not sure it's worth our effort to.
The criteria today is much tighter.
It's much different.
Harder to get.
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Mr. Stark.
Not only do you have Mr. Lanzafame's opinion, but Kaiser Marston did a brief. Kaiser Marston, a firm that does study these formation projects, did a brief overview of the Foothill project area and indicated in their study attached to your reports that in their view, you likely won't make the findings. They're rather expensive to go through the process and time-consuming, so they've given you initial heads-up that they, too, do not think it's viable.
Okay, so Mr. Draymond, then Mr. Quintero.
And aside from the Kaiser Marston comments, I have been persuaded by the basic lack of critical mass, if you will. There just isn't enough there to make this happen. It's an avenue that was absolutely worth pursuing in terms of looking into it, investigating it, which is why I was most insistent that Mr. Lanzafame do just that, have his department do just that. I think that these are stones that we have to, we didn't want to leave any stones unturned, but I am convinced that there is just not enough critical mass to do this. So I would not be supporting that at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so let's take that out, which is, I guess, the first part of the staff recommendation. So what's left is to study the viability of Foothill Boulevard as a commercial corridor and the potential effects of zoning height modifications, correct? That's what would remain if you pull out the project area study. Mr. Draymond.
And pending what Mr. Quintero might have also his hand up.
I was also going to say that for sure, I'm for that. In addition to that, aren't we also going to, and the report mentions it, aren't we also going to look at Spar Heights and the other areas? So that's part of the overall package.
Well, let me go back to Mr. Draymond.
That was part of my understanding as well. And I assume that is the case, Mr. Hagani?
That is the case.
Okay. With that, Mr. Mayor, I put my hand up because, as corny as it may sound to some, I really would like to make this motion and attach my name to it as having made this motion.
That is corny. What is the motion again?
8B2 as modified.
Which is?
It's 8B2, taking out the redevelopment.
And leaving the remainder in.
That's correct.
It's actually option 2 as described in the staff report.
Right.
Is there a second to Mr. Draymond's motion?
Second.
Seconded. Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond?
Yes.
Friedman? Arrow?
Yes.
Beaver?
Aye.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Okay.
Good night.
Thank you for those who came for this item. What's the next item, Mr. Kasaki?
Mr. Mayor and Council, we now return to oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for an investigation and a report.
Okay. Bill Wiseman, followed by Timothy Catledge.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Bill Weissman, resident of Glendale. And just wanted to briefly follow up on something that Councilman Weaver said regarding the Foothill Lumber Project being the impetus for some of the activities that happened regarding the plan. That wasn't the only one. There was one other project, too, which was the Verdugo and Broadview building, the medical office building, which, as of today, still has no tenants, zero, as near as I can tell, in spite of the fact that we heard much rhetoric about the demand for medical office space in the area. Actually, what I came down here for tonight was to thank Mayor Najarian in his capacity as the Metro Chair for fighting the good fight last Thursday regarding the 710 tunnel extension. The Metro boardroom last Thursday was one of the most crazy places I've ever been in my life. And I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that. And I have to say, I feel a lot more comfortable in this cozy little room in this, civil surroundings rather than, being in a room with hundreds of angry, chanting bus riders. And I commend you for being willing to come forward and attempt to negotiate. It didn't really look to me like they were prepared to give much in the way of negotiation, but you did fight the good fight, and we appreciate it. And I'd like to mention that not only South Pasadena, Glendale, and the unincorporated Crescenta Valley will be involved in the further struggle regarding the 710 tunnel, but the folks a little further along the 210 freeway in Sunland Tujunga, these are the same people who kept the Home Depot out of Sunland Tujunga, are also getting involved in the fight as well. So hopefully, we may have lost the battle, but we haven't lost the war, would be my cliche to add to the discussion. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Timothy Catledge.
Hello, Mayor and and council members and staff and the public. Come here to talk about somewhat about the Refugee Act of '72, and I find that it seems to me like it seems to be kind of unconstitutional, because when Duke Mason got it together, I wasn't here. I was living in Chicago at the time, and so I got here. And normally, when you immigrate to come to our country, there's some stipulations for coming here. You have to wait time. You have to wait 5 years, I guess, before you become a citizen. Now, you go past that process and you come here, then those other stipulations should be there. So I don't know how it got passed. I don't know how it got passed in the first place without those stipulations. But I guess '72 was a pretty. I guess the country was doing pretty good. We had a lot of money, and I guess we were big time United States of America. So, I guess it got through. Now people who come here don't seem to, without these stipulations, don't seem to have that kind of respect for what our country is about. See, they don't understand about being free, what freedom is in this kind of country, how we got to where we got to be, because of our Constitution. Because we say those three great words we say, we the people. Not we the Hispanics, not we the Armenians, not we the Asians. It's we the people of the United States, not just America, United States of America. In order to form a more perfect union, see, people to come together. You know how all these different nationalities got together, all these different kinds of people got together to put that Constitution together. What we call our great document. And just people don't understand that to form this Constitution, which is over 200 years, or 300 years, whenever it got done. And when we have when you come in from here from this special act, you get things given to you. Like, I don't understand how you get Social Security without having to work for it. And you get money for having up to 4 kids. You get that. I'm a naturalized citizen. I wish I had some kind of deal like that myself. That's a good deal to get. And then we come to the point, a matter that you want things, or you think you're entitled to things, or you want demands upon America. Like, for these last 7 years, I had to endure this this April 24th stuff, because you claim that somewhere 95 years ago, this other country called Turkey, slaughtered and killed your people, the Armenian people. And and you want the only two countries left is Turkey and the United States. And I talked to many people about it. I said, what does the United States have to do with this? Period. You know, this is in our country. You know, why don't you settle your differences in your own country? You're fine. If you want to do that in your own country, that's fine. But, you know, this is America. You know, we're not here to remember dead people. I mean, what did they do in the first place? Somebody slaughtered them. You know? So, is that about it?
No.
You can go on.
Oh,
I'm sorry, that was not the timer.
I don't know what that is.
These are members of the public trying to reach me urgently with response to some of your comments, but I'll let that go for now.
Right. So I just found out, even on this so-called, you want to say it was a genocide or something, I found out the information, because I know I ran into maybe a couple of Turkish people along in the years, and they told me it was a civil war. So maybe a few weeks ago, somebody told me, says, well, this it wasn't no genocide, because your ancestors attacked the Ottoman Empire. And when you did that, see, that set in motion, for the Turkish people defeated you. You tried to attack them, they defeated you, and then they said, well, we're going to deport you, and then some of the other people probably got mad, and then they said, well, we're going to, slaughter you and kill you. So that part was correct. The part about being a genocide wasn't because you attacked them first. See?
Well, I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Catledge, and I usually don't respond to people after their comments, but your presentation of the facts from when the Constitution was created to the Immigration Act to the requirements to become a citizen, I could pass on. But when you start talking about the Armenian people attacking the Turks and somehow having the genocide being brought upon them and deserving of it, you've gone too far. Please have a seat, Mr. Catledge. Carmen Wilson. Carmen Wilson, followed by Margaret Hammond.
Hi, good evening. I was here about a month ago talking to you about an encroachment in my property, and they told me that they were going to help me, but I haven't heard anything from anybody. And I just want to know.
Okay, if that's your question, we can respond to that at the end, and we can find out what was done and if there is an answer coming for you.
Okay, because they received a letter to demolish the guest house and to demolish the wall that is on my property, and nothing has been done.
This is the Emerald Isle issue.
Yes, this is the Emerald Isle issue.
Okay.
And this is a month already.
Okay, so you'd like a status on that?
I would like to.
After all the comments, we can respond to that.
Please, thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's see. Margaret Hammond.
Good evening, Your Honor, Mayor, members of the council, staff, and audience. My name is Margaret Hammond, and I have lived in Glendale for 50 years. I attended, again, the memorial service yesterday, which was a wonderful tribute to our American citizens, young people, sons, fathers, brothers, who paid the supreme sacrifice so that we can have freedom in our country, and they stood up for what they believed was their rights, which is what I am doing right now also. I found it a wonderful service, concluded by the taps, which is always rather heartrending. My husband was a bugler, and that was one of the things that he did when he was in service. He served in the Canadian Army. I had a very part of the jarring that I found a jarring factor was there were individuals in Russian uniforms who were at the memorial and were recognized. I felt that this was not a proper thing to do. I felt this was honoring our Americans who had paid for our freedom. with their lives. And if you wonder why, I happen to be a Canadian, as you know, and on September the 1st, 1939, the Canadians were the first to declare war against Hitler. And he was a part of the group, that became part of the group that was called the Axis. Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, and eventually Hirohito. The Canadians were part of the British Army, in a sense, that we were under the British Empire at that time. We had many, many thousands of young Americans who came across to join our Canadian services and who went to Britain. The Allies fought alone for many years against this Axis group, and many of our Canadians and British were imprisoned and killed. And so were the Americans who served with us by the Germans and the Russians, and they did fight in Italy. I feel that and then look at the Berlin Wall that continued on in the Cold War by the Russians for many years, causing many problems, both financial, both economic and emotional, to the people that they had under their thumb, so to speak. Also including the Finnish people, other people who had nothing to do with only standing up for their rights, Polish, a lot of people. So I do feel that having people in foreign uniforms who, in my estimation, were part of the original, they turned around when they were attacked by the Germans in June 1941, the Barbarossa. They did turn around. They needed the help of the Americans by then to supply them with arms, whatever, the airplanes, food, whatever they needed. And then again continued on as an ally after that time. But up until 1941, they were part of the Axis of the enemy. So, of course, I feel in my heart that whatever goes on, it should be kept as an American service for our American people who lost their lives in the war. That is my opinion of this. Thank you very much.
Children at home, if you're watching, you will get your correct facts on history after all the speakers are done. Mike Mohill, followed by Al Hoffman and Robert Movsesian.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Mike Mohill, resident of Glendale. I'm very happy the city took action in December 2008 to direct staff in planning an overall vision and corresponding policies and standards for Glendale neighborhoods of the Crescenta Valley. Why did it take so long, as I mentioned before, for this action to take place? I'm happy to hear that Councilman Draymond was very much involved with his home base. If he wasn't, I would have been surprised. What is surprisingly is the low turnout from what I hear of these meetings. That surprises me, because if they're that concerned, why don't they show up? In 2003, the city chose to destroy the South Glendale only public swimming pool at Pacific Park. Council promised to replace the pool, but only today is the city clerk being authorized to take bids to construct a new scaled-down $6 million swimming pool. Not an Olympic-sized pool, as many of us envisioned. Why, after many years of community activists pleading for large open space and a regional soccer field for South Glendale, did the City Council finally, in 2010, contact Target Corporation to either sell or donate the city their 9.5 acres of industrial property? Councilman John Draymond campaigned in 2007 to secure Rock Haven Sanitarium for his local constituents in Montrose. About 8 months after his election, the Glendale City Council agreed to purchase Rock Haven for over $8 million. In the budget of 2010, an additional $1.2 million is being allocated for Rock Haven. But to date, there is no blueprint as to what's going to be done with Rock Haven. All I hear is maybe this, we're planning to do this, but nothing concrete. If I was to spend $10 million to buy a piece of property, I'd want to know what it's being used for, not maybes. Why did it take 7 years for the City Council to address the swimming pool for Pacific Park? Why has it taken years even to consider a dedicated soccer field for South Glendale? And why only after a few months to consider the purchase of Rock Haven? The residents of far North Glendale want the City Council to participate with the City of Los Angeles and the county to purchase the Verdugo Hills Golf Course, which is not even located in the city of Glendale. If these residents really want a golf course in move-in condition, they should have approached our City Council and asked them to purchase the beautiful Chevy Chase Country Club in Chevy Chase Canyon. Because of the current economic downturn, the country club could have been purchased for a measly $3 million. If the City Council was more concerned about the entire city residents' needs, then the Chevy Chase Country Club could have been purchased a long, long time ago and become an enterprise account for the city, a business account that could generate needed income, especially in days like today. Council members are on record to have said in the past they were always looking to purchase parkland for the city. But when they had the opportunity arose in the Chevy Chase Canyon area recently, politics instead prevailed. Why is it okay to have a non-country club, public golf course, and tennis court in the area of East Glen Oaks Boulevard with all the additional traffic for the locals to bear, but the city refused to purchase the Chevy Chase Country Club? Why is it okay to have a soccer complex at the end of Fern Lane, located in the Verdugo Woodlands, with all the additional traffic for the local for all the local residents, but not for the residents who live in the Chevy Chase Canyon and the Chevy Chase Golf Course area? Why is it okay to have Brand Art and Music Library at the end of Grandview Avenue, added traffic on Kenneth Road, and Grandview is okay, but the city refused to purchase the Chevy Chase Golf Course? Why, through the years, have our 5 elected council members never chosen to purchase the Chevy Chase Country Club when it was available and the public could have been enjoying it, all its benefits, even today? What is the reason the local residents want to keep the golf course private and the public out of their neighborhood? Why is Chevy Chase treated as exclusive, but the rest of the city is not? Ladies and gentlemen, if we had 7 council districts and an elected mayor who was responsible for everybody, place would be fair and balanced. Chevy Chase Canyon is the perfect example of 5 councilmen acting as one when we should have 7 districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Hoffman.
Mayor Najarian, council members and staff, Al Hoffman, resident of Glendale. I read about the 710 freeway tunnel project in the paper, and was in a couple of days, your article, Mayor, and another person wrote about it. And my question to you is, as a member of the Metropolitan Transit Authority, I believe, is that a county position, county office? And doesn't that include Alhambra and San Gabriel and San Marino and all those places, all those people that want the freeway?
If the question is, are they in the county? Yes, they are in the county.
And all those people are in favor of the tunnel. I am not in favor of the tunnel. I've opposed that. I have signed a thing with Caltrans, and they contacted me that they still own all the property for the original plan to continue the freeway, which I believe should have been done and should be done. What's astounding is, for, 30 years now, South Pasadena has been able to stop this freeway, which would help all of us, for 1.5 miles of the length of freeway in their city. What I'd like to know is where did all the millions of dollars they spent go to stop the freeway? I think that's something we ought to look into. Who got the money? Somebody they knew paid off and they stopped this freeway. My cousin lives in San Marino. You can't believe how they've stopped this freeway. And it should be done. I know the trucks, everybody's opposed to the trucks. Now, is all of the city of Glendale, you want to have the whole city of Glendale oppose this tunnel or even the completion, I believe, of the freeway? Am I correct? To the completion as well? Or is it just the tunnel?
I'll answer
Okay,
you
well,
at the end.
I think it was stated at the motion we made to support, we would stop the freeway in total, the connection. And is all of Glendale in favor of that? I'm certainly not. And I think you're playing to the people in North Glendale. And La Cañada, I know friends of mine live there. They'd like to have that freeway done. And trucks are a necessity. You want to put them all on rails, then you have to have rails go to all our markets and everything. Most of the trucks on the freeways that we see around here are making deliveries to local stores, which we need. So as a member of the Metropolitan Transit Authority, you have to consider transit as a whole and what is required to move goods around. That's an important commercial thing, Mayor. It's vital. And if you cause more expense to the trucking, it just costs us more money to get products. So I think you need to, I was disappointed that the council voted to have Glendale support the other cities, but I'm not sure all of Glendale is in support of that. And I think before you go any further, you need to get all of Glendale's input before making a position with South Pasadena and I don't know who at La Cañada, Flint Ridge, because all the other cities around there want that done. Thank you.
Robert Movsesian and Joanne Thompson. Ms. Thompson, if you're available.
Mayor, council members, I'm Joanne Thompson. I'm from Montrose Village Newsstand on Honolulu. This Saturday, there was a private wedding that took place on the 2300 block. And from what I understand, Dale Dawson filled out papers for this individual couple, and Mr. Draymond helped, I think, somewhere along the line. We were not informed like we would be with filming. We were not compensated. One store lost $4,000 of revenue during that time. We will never see it. We're hanging on by a thread. And we want to know that the street will not be closed for a private event ever again. Not all, I shouldn't say all. We've been collecting signatures. We have 65 stores that agree with what I'm saying. We have over 300 signatures of just the residents around the area that don't even understand how this happened in the first place. Signs went up on Wednesday, no parking, and it was the 11th hour. We couldn't do anything. We don't know what street could be closed down next. Could Brand Boulevard be used for a birthday party? If I want to have a slumber party, can I just have a permit written out? The street was closed down from noon till midnight, and we couldn't do anything. I can't move my store so I can have business. And yeah, the sidewalks were open, but when you have a police car at each end and a sign saying road closed, it's not really welcoming. And when you do walk down the street, you're walking in the middle of somebody's wedding, you don't really feel like shopping. You feel like you're invading somebody's privacy. It was odd, it was bizarre, and we don't know where to go from here to really stop something like this. So we do need your help. Nobody can just walk into our city and buy a street for the day. It's not beneficial to business or to the residents.
so we'll give you some response at the end of all the comments.
Awesome. Thank you.
Herbert Milano?
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council, City staff. My name is Herbert Milano. This past Memorial Day, I usually attend the memorial event for Vietnam, for the Vietnam dead, for those individuals who have, sacrificed their lives for this country. It has a personal resonance to me, so I attend that. And I say to you now that that particular event was respectful, it was dignified, it was poignant, it was to the spirit of Memorial Day. And then I came down here to watch an event that is much larger in scope, much more people attended, commemorates all the war dead from the United States, all the people who gave their lives for America. And there's usually things about this particular event that I find special. Not only do we get to commemorate a much larger group, but we get the flyover, which I always find it very nice. We have this particular event of those missing in action that I think is very special. We had a speech by Adam Schiff that was very poignant, really nice. I really love that particular speech. Carol Liu also gave a very direct and poignant speech. Except that I have a lot of difficulty, just like Margaret Hammond did, with regard to commemorating individuals who are not for this purpose. The purpose of this Memorial Day is to honor those individuals who gave up their lives for America. Now, for veterans, I sometimes even find it difficult to acknowledge being a veteran because we got Veterans Day for that. This is the day where we commemorate the sacrifices that the families, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, children of individuals who died and sacrificed for America. That's the purpose of this event. It's not to applaud Kiwanis, it's not to applaud, the Chamber of Commerce, none of that. It's for this particular purpose. And sometimes I get the feeling that it's becoming politicized on things that are really unnecessary. I'm a very strong supporter of many issues concerning the Armenian genocide, and we have events and places for it. But we cannot expect to have this very special moment where we come in to commemorate American dead and have it become something else than it is. I think that if there is an acknowledgement of the sacrifices that Armenians during the Second World War did, that we have a separate event for that. I've always been a proponent of having a large central park where we would have a special venue where we could have all of these commemorations in a way that is dignified, not on the street. But still, I in total agreement with regard to this issue with regard to Margaret Hammond. It was inappropriate. There is another place to place the politics of this city and other ways of basically doing it. I don't think this is not the place to do that. If I'm emotional about this issue, it's because it has a significant amount of resonance to me of what it actually means. I think that perhaps in the future we should have as MC maybe Don Biggs. We need someone who's a local, who fought in a war, who experienced himself directly individuals within his unit who died. I think we need that kind of relevance for someone to MC this thing in a way that is commensurate with the sacrifice that many people give. I have all the other issues to bring up, but I think for today, this is the one area concerning the scope of the dignity that we expect these events to have. And I hope in the future that we have a change in the way that it is conducted, in the way that it is emceed. Thank you very much.
Robert Movsesian.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Najarian, very dear council members and staff. There was a guy last week by the name of Robert Bunanian, that A-face, who I think received his education and information from other planets or from that nuts Glenbeck, calling on intelligent and intellectual city council members ignorant. He doesn't dare to take a man like Robert Movsesian. I think he has a bald, short guy complex, and he has intellectual disability. You should know synagogue, church, mosque is not the place to fart. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards for our communications. Let me just make a couple comments. First to Margaret and the history lesson. At no time, Margaret, was Russia, the USSR, part of the Axis powers. And I challenge you and anyone in this room or watching to give me any shred of evidence that the USSR was allied with Germany, Iraq, Italy, Japan, Hungary, or Romania. To state otherwise is a complete and absolute aberration and revision of history. In fact, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States has issued a comment recently. And his comments were, let me be clear, America wants a strong, peaceful, and prosperous Russia. This belief is rooted in our respect for the Russian people and a shared history between our nations that goes beyond competition. Indeed, despite our past rivalry, our people were allies in the greatest struggle of the last century. So, Margaret, anytime you can show me something that says Russia was part of the Axis, I will issue a retraction. But the point is, those gentlemen and ladies were there to honor the U.S. war dead, and they wore their uniforms. Specifically, their comrades, their allies from the United States in World War II who lost their lives fighting the Nazis. Now, are we so closed-minded that we refuse to let people come forward and honor our own dead? Because that's what they were there to do, Margaret. They weren't there to honor their dead. We weren't there to honor them. They were there to honor the U.S. war dead. And they were very proud and touched that they were able to do so. And if you have any misrecollection as to that, the entire event was videotaped. And that's exactly what happened there. Now, as for Mr. Milano, there's a name Najarian that's etched in the Vietnam Memorial, and that was a relative of mine. So, to say that you've got the corner on grief for American war dead, if that's what you're insinuating, that's completely wrong. The other issues about the Kiwanis and all that, that's out of my hands. That's the Chamber of Commerce that organizes that event. But those 5 or 6 elderly gentlemen were there to honor the United States war dead and to make an issue of it on such an occasion and before the entire city, I just take issue with. But we have to look back and think about what the point of Memorial Day was and when it was initially proclaimed. We had half of the country had seceded. The country had been broken in two. And yet this Memorial Day in 1868, when it was proclaimed, was for all dead. Even the bitter enemies who killed more troops than in any other war. It shows that there's a spirit of compassion and a spirit of embracing and a spirit of memorializing and commemorating deaths in battle. So that's all I want to say on that. Mr. Draymond.
Well, Mr. Mayor, this has been a very interesting oral communications period. It makes sometimes I wonder whether it's sometimes some of these issues come to us because they're attracted to the light, or whether it's a full moon sometimes. But periodically, people will come before the council or write to the newspaper on this issue of the genocide. And in particular, one of the facets of it that I always find most upsetting are those who try to say that this gentleman did and others in the past. Well, what did the Armenian people do to cause the Turks to react this way? And it really troubles me. This is, and I think it doesn't hurt to restate and restate. This is, to me personally, it is an unspeakable shame that this genocide, and make no mistake, this was a genocide, is not recognized by our government in Washington as historic fact. The fact that we have not recognized the genocide, in my opinion, has continued to provide cover for people who are, let's say, of sounder mind than the gentleman who spoke, who make this kind of comment. We've provided cover for these fringe individuals who make comments like this. And it goes on, in my view, it points out that our silence as a government concerning this kind of evil has consequences. And the consequences unfold in a variety of ways and events through the 20th century. The evil, the progeny of our not recognizing formally recognizing as a government, the genocide, that progeny can be found in Cambodia, and Rwanda, and Darfur, and Bosnia, and the Holocaust. And I've said this publicly any number of times, including at the observance of the genocide that we do each year at the Alex Theater. As a person of the Jewish faith, with family that perished in the Holocaust, I truly believe that, and I wonder what good they would have contributed to society had we recognized the Armenian genocide in the first place. What good they might have contributed to society. They didn't have that chance. And so I believe, as a person of the Jewish faith, that I am inextricably linked to the events of the genocide. I was highly offended by the comment this evening. Mr. Mayor, I know that speaker has been here before, and usually something offensive and of a racial or ethnic or cultural nature always comes out of his mouth. Something has to be said about it, and I had to chime in on that. The other issue that I suppose I should comment about, Mr. Mayor, has to do with the issue that Joanne Thompson raised regarding the wedding event in Montrose. This was not a private event, first of all, and a lot of comments issuing from Ms. Thompson are not particularly accurate. A lot of numbers and supposed facts are being thrown around. Someone lost $4,000 in revenues, businesses closed early, it drove business out of the town, it was a private event. Nonsense. First of all, this was an MSPA-sponsored event, and it was done for a specific reason. It was done because in the last years, specific businesses who were members of the Montrose Shopping Park Association had asked the board of directors to do public events that would feature Montrose as a unique venue that would be showcasing if you will, the wedding trade. In other words, food and beverage, people who supply goods, services, accessories for weddings. The only private nature of it was that they used a private wedding to do so. It went through the city process, and Ms. Thompson is quite right when she said I was, quote, involved. I was involved the way I've been involved in requests from literally dozens, if not hundreds, of residents over the last 3 years. Someone contacts me as they contact my colleagues on the council, asking for assistance in getting through a city process, or where do I go to get this, or how do I find that, and that's what I did. I'm not on the MSPA board, and this is an event that the MSPA sponsored. Their name is on the permit. It is through their insurance company that the event was insured, and so on. It was just that, a promotion. No less than 7 MSPA businesses were directly involved in the production of that event. The idea was a young couple, in case you didn't see the paper, young couple who met and fell in love in Montrose, also fell in love with Montrose, and asked to be married in the town. They engaged the local baker to create the wedding cake. They engaged the local salon to do the hair and makeup. They engaged the local bar to be the bar of record for their wedding. They engaged the Montrose Bowl to be the reception hall for the event. They engaged the local printer to do the printing of the event, and the 2 local restaurant businesses to cater the event, and so on and so forth. What we have is a particular merchant who tried unsuccessfully to whip up a lot of furor in the town about it, and circulated a petition. I might add, these 300 signatures, it probably exceeds the number of businesses in Montrose by 50%. There are 35 businesses in that block, many of whom were involved, and many of whom came up to the police officer who was assigned to the event and indicated to him, hey, what's really going on here? We have this individual owning a store who made specific threats to the people doing the event, the people putting up the no parking sign, threatened to disrupt the wedding, and so on and so forth. And once he explained what the event was, that it was not a private event, that it was a planned event, they said, oh, okay, got it. Where there was and this is what they're still looking into, as I understand it, where there was a legitimate, I think, in my opinion, legitimate problem was in the notification. That's one of the things that Ms. Thompson raised. This event began its planning at a time when the Montrose board was changing their personnel, if you will. The longtime president of the association had stepped down, and there was a new president. And I think that the city process assumed that MSPA was doing the notification. The MSPA assumed the city was doing the notification. In fact, there was no notification, as far as I know. Usually it's in the form of a letter or in the form of minutes. I don't think that happened this time. But to answer the question specifically, since when are there street closures for private events? Oh my God, there's too many instances of that to even put down on a sheet of paper. Every time there's filming, every time a car dealership does an activity on Brand Boulevard, every time retailers in the city do it, this is constant. It is not a private event, though, and my recommendation is going to be, just so you know where I'm going, that in the future, if there is an event like this, that guidelines be developed, much like filming, that identify the impact, create impact levels, and indicate minimum payment due to impacted businesses. But what we had here was certain people also with an axe to grind who weren't even remotely located near this closure who were claiming tremendous impact. Mr. Mayor, I've spent more than 50 years in Montrose. And during that 50-year time period, there's certain things you know, and as a store owner, you know. What I learned growing up as the son of someone that owned a store there is that one of the slowest retail days of the entire year is Memorial Day Saturday when there's a Lakers playoff game going. I was at Damon's that night for dinner. On a Saturday night at Damon's, there's usually an hour wait to get in. It was empty. Brand Boulevard was a ghost town. Kenneth Village, a ghost town. Adams Square, a ghost town. I doubt this wedding in Montrose caused all that. By the way, a number of businesses have contacted me to say this was one of the best days they've had in quite some time. Paradise Ice Cream. They had a line out their door. They usually don't. Revelation Tops sales were up 58% over that same Saturday, Memorial Day Saturday, a year prior. So anyway, I am sure that the information will go to the MSBA board at their meeting this week, and they'll address it.
Thank you. Mr. Quintero.
As tired as I am, I want to say a few things. The Ottoman Empire, as it disintegrated, starting in Eastern Europe, literally, it was a bloodbath on the way out of Bulgaria, Romania, Macedonia, etc., Greece. So, from the beginning of the dissolution of that empire, they were killing people as their armies were defeated. The Armenian population began to be massacred way before the First World War. And it did culminate in the genocide, no question about that. But it actually started before the First World War and actually continued after the First World War. Armenians lived in the Anatolian plateau for 3,000 years, and there's none there now. There's none there now. They were wiped off the face of the earth in their homeland. So it's just ridiculous that this gentleman continues to say some of the things that he says. In terms of the older gentleman that showed up, I support what they're trying to do. They're basically hoping to have a monument somewhere in the city to commemorate their involvement in the Second World War. And I would encourage some other groups like the Filipinos, the many Filipinos that fought with the Americans. It was an American colony at the time. There's lots of different Filipino groups, so hopefully they'll get together and put something together. And I agree with you. They were there to honor the American war dead. Now, in terms of the Soviet Union, I do disagree with you on that. They signed a non-aggression pact with the Nazis. They invaded Poland. They killed, just in one encounter, they killed over 20,000 Polish officers and soldiers. That's why this Polish president was killed not long ago. They went on to invade Finland. Later on, of course, they backed the North Koreans and the Chinese. American soldiers were certainly killed in Korea and later on in Vietnam. That was all part of a Soviet Union political. But these older men who were there the other afternoon or the other morning were there to honor the American dead there at the memorial site. So I don't think they had anything nefarious in mind or wanted to do anything other than to show their solidarity with the veterans of the Second World War that are whose names are on that wall. But overall, I mean, I do agree that this is a patriotism and citizenship committee event. However, the city of Glendale is totally tied into this event, and we have to, I think, become a little more involved because I'm not happy with where it's headed. And I certainly got that response, not on the issue of the older soldiers, but I certainly got, that's what I mentioned earlier in the meeting, I certainly got that feeling from some of the American vets that I met, or, that came up and talked to me about it. And there is a marked contrast between what we do here in Glendale and what's done up in Montrose. In Montrose, I leave that commemoration event, I don't know, feeling different than when I am done here in the city of Glendale's event. So we have a whole year to work on it. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Starbird.
If we're done with that item, I want to also respond to Ms. Carmen's issue she raised, a property owner who's had somebody building on her property. There has been considerable follow-up, and I think a resolution, the last update I saw, if we haven't brought her up to date, I apologize for that, and we will have staff get with her and bring her up to date. But there has been considerable work done on that, and I think she'll be pleased with the result.
Okay.
What is someone going to do?
What's the time frame?
Well, we can do it first thing in the morning, do it now, do it after the meeting. Mr. Hagani and Mr. Garcia are fully aware of what's gone on. So,
as far as the 710 tunnel issue goes, I'm going to reserve my right to answer on another evening when I've got a little bit more of a voice left. So.
Business?
Okay, if there's anything else, we had some new business.
Mr. Mayor?
Looks like Mr. Weaver left you.
Looks like Mr. Weaver left me with the motion, so. All right. Mr. Mayor, I would move that pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.1A5 and Charter Article 8, Section 1, Mia Yoon is hereby approved and promoted to the position of Assistant City Attorney, Litigation, the City of Glendale, and further that a written copy of this motion be transcribed, certified, and delivered to the City Clerk, to the Office of Civil Service Commission in the City of Glendale, as for the written statement required by Article, trying to count the X's and I's and V's on this, sorry, by Article 24, Section 5, Subsection 2 of the Charter for the suspension of competition for said office.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond?
Here, yes.
Thank you. I knew what you meant. Friedman?
Thank you.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver? Mayor Najarian?
Yes. One more?
Better read it.
Would you mind?
You're the only one with any voice left, Mr.
I move that the city attorney be and hereby is authorized to enter into a retainer agreement to utilize the legal services of the law office of Jenkins and Hogan to provide administrative, investigative, evaluation services to the city and to incur necessary expenses in connection therewith. The agreement shall, in addition to other provisions, contain a fee cap for the provision of said services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond?
Yes.
Friedman? Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver? Mayor Najarian?
Yes.
Motions to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second? We're adjourned.